This year, some unknown man is about to turn 55 long and hard years old. He could not understand what he was doing at such an age, because others would have retired long ago, and his life turned out to be extremely unsuccessful and full of disappointments. It was at that moment that some strange monsters began to speak to him, as if trying to break his spirit. The man did not understand why he was considered a loser, because he had been through a lot, and these monsters did not even leave him a break. They continued to attack him furiously at that moment, not giving him the slightest chance to rest. The other players of his generation were called holy swords, gods of fencing or something else, but he remained just an old man with a sword or a miserable shareholder with dementia. He did not raise his sword, and this simple reason was more than enough for his suffering. Since childhood, he grew up in an orphanage, deprived of a real family, love, and support. He recalled how one girl called him by name and asked him not to be afraid because the teacher was okay and he should just continue writing. Even the teacher from the orphanage and the other children who became his real family remained in his heart forever. However, all these people dear to his heart died tragically, leaving him completely alone. When a collapse opened in the sky, bloodthirsty monsters fell upon the earth, sparing no one. These creatures took away from him absolutely everything he ever had and loved in life. Despite this, he did not allow himself to fall into despair, continuing to fight with all his might. Even when death was practically breathing down his neck, he still did not lower his sword. Even at such a moment, he found his last strength and refused to give up. Suddenly, someone appeared right in front of him, and this person changed everything around him. Some girl suddenly asked how he felt after such a difficult fight. At that moment, something incredible happened, a real miracle that changed his fate. He was saved by the very figure he could never forget. It was then that he wanted to become as strong as those who saved him. He put everything he had left into this desire, without reserve or regret. Why, despite how many monsters he defeated, it all turned out to be useless. He never became a hero, failing to achieve what he once dreamed of. And in the end, he was unable to protect anything that was truly dear to him. He screamed at the top of his lungs without any difficulty, but no one came to his aid. This inner impotence and awareness of defeat destroyed him greatly from within. His body was treacherously failing him, refusing at the most inopportune and dangerous moment. It was then that something strange happened that could completely change the course of events. He saw a terrifying monster appear out of nowhere right in front of him. He had nothing, no family, no home, no dreams. His life seemed broken. That is why he could not stop regretting everything he had lost and missed. He dreamed of the opportunity to turn back time and change everything for the better forever. Finally, he was congratulated on clearing the dungeon called the Ancient Dragon's Nest. Shin Sang-yun continued to stand there, not knowing what to do after this victory. He couldn't understand why he was being so stupid, considering he was already so old. His name was Shin Sang-yun, and for 30 years he had remained a simple swordsman, only managing to get into the top 100 of the country once. However, this achievement meant almost nothing, because there were too many strong players in the world. He didn't understand why his strength growth suddenly stopped, even though he was absorbing artifacts and reading skill books. That very late dawn appeared a model student, as if he had been specially waiting for this moment. At that very moment, Shin Sang-hyun noticed someone coming out of the portal, straight towards him. The late bloomer student blessed him for his hard work and rewarded him with a perfect finishing blow. The man who appeared again turned out to be a member of his contract group called Late Dawn, and they contacted him even though he was only a third-rate swordsman. Late Dawn explained that when a player reached level 850, all of his stats and artifacts would double, and at level 900, their stats would triple. But his current level was no higher than 650. One of the crazy terms of the contract was that he never received any real benefit from their union during the entire time. He ordered the skill book to be eaten, even though Shin Sang-hyun was just about to do it himself. Right now, he was going to absorb this book to gain new powers and knowledge. Absorbing artifacts was the only method he discovered after awakening to understand his own skill. He tried to roast the artifacts before consuming them, but he realized with regret that it didn't matter. It had been 30 long years since he had finished his useless experiments with the artifacts. When he used mana synchronization with an artifact of the appropriate rank, he realized that it would also activate his new artifact absorption skill. One thing he realized too late, because other players became strong immediately after their awakening. Shin Sang-yun gently placed his hand on the old book, feeling a little nervous before activating it. He couldn't understand. Shouldn't there be some kind of instructions? Since this was clearly a skill book. The late dawn of an educated student admitted that very little was known about this skill and asked for forgiveness for his helplessness. However, he said that there was still enough time and advised to compromise by starting synchronization. Shin Sang-hyun sharply asked who said that he had much time left, since he was already almost 60. He added that if he had a son at 30, he would now be 30 years old, and if the child had appeared earlier, perhaps he would already have grandchildren. But these star creatures do not know about this because people are mortal. He apologized if he said anything unnecessary, but Shin Sang-hyun replied that he did nothing wrong at all. It's just that his life turned out in such a way that now it is filled only with regrets about what was lost. He could not forget that receding back of the man he tried to become at least a little like. But now he felt completely exhausted, too old and tired for all this. If only he had the chance to become just a little bit younger, everything would be different. At that moment, his companion seemed to have some idea that flashed across his mind. Shin Sang-hyun calmly said that he was retiring and let it be written in the contract. At this moment, Shin Sang-hyun gradually began to realize that something had changed around him. A strange scene unfolded before him, which could be observed as if from the outside. The last thing he remembered was that at the age of 55, a late dawn utilized his essence in an experiment, and time turned back. Rank 6 player Park Youngmin, who was working as a reporter, reported that the dungeons and gates had awakened people and asked if others had entered. Han Hyun-chun, the head of the Hyun-chun Corporation, confirmed that this is indeed the case, calling the dungeons steps for players. As for the gates, these are completely different dimensions that do not intersect with known territories. These uncharted regions are set to become a place of exploration and exploitation for future pioneers, and the reporter asked their opinions on this year's dungeons. Shin Sang-hyun realized that he had actually turned back time because he remembered that TV show. He was aware of what was happening, but despite this, he remained confused for 4 days. After this, he lost consciousness, and when he woke up, he found himself in an old studio apartment from 30 years ago. He found himself not in the body of a 55-year-old man, but in a 25-year-old man, with all his memories. No matter what the reason was, he returned to his past. There is no other way to explain it than by a miracle of the constellations. Shin Sang-hyun still had some unsolved problems, but that didn't matter now. He had to act. It was a bronze-rank general, whom he had once been fortunate enough to acquire despite his low rank. However, he knew its hidden ability, the absorption rate, the coefficient of which for the bronze rank was 10%, and after retroactive application of the artifact, 20. Despite the slow absorption rate due to long periods of inactivity, the most important thing was its hidden effect. The process of synchronizing mana with the Venomot dagger began, and his mind sank into the unconscious space. The gap of unconsciousness is a special space that he must overcome every time to eat the artifact, and he was always worried about what would happen as a result. Shin Sang-hyun was very surprised to see that this time everything went unusually calmly. The preparation for the absorption of the dagger was completed and the process was completely completed. A dish in the form of a grilled chicken, drizzled with aromatic olive oil, appeared before him. Shin Sang-hyun was glad that this time it was a normal dish and not a disgusting centipede from the swamps. He could eat such a dish at any moment without experiencing the slightest disgust. He permanently gained a +2 to his agility, which was the first pleasant result of the absorption. A hidden skill called Demon Strike was also acquired, which strengthens the attack. The absorbed dagger immediately disappeared from his inventory, leaving behind only new powers. The main character was a little sorry that he no longer had it, but he still wasn't going to use it. But now it was time to get ready. Dungeon number 0.85 was explored by a team led by Captain Yoon Dae-king. At that moment, someone shouted at the captain, asking why the commander of the porter team had been called here. They were informed that they had a new recruit who had joined 4 days ago named Shin Sang-hyun, and that he would soon be joining the team of players. The man was sure that he was really going to join the team of players, not porters. He had already signed the corresponding decree, but asked if there were any problems with this, since he had only recently awakened. Besides, he hadn't even finished the academy yet, and the captain had never accepted such unstable players into the team before, because it could upset the balance. He turned to him at that very moment when the whole team was waiting for a decision. The captain asked if he was monitoring the distribution of cargo in the deposit system, and immediately demanded treatment for himself. Just let him give the porters a voice, otherwise they will make an already unbalanced group even more unstable. The guy asked the captain why he decided to accept him at all, since he himself considered it illogical. The man said that if anyone died in this raid, it would be him, and then the porters would calm down and there would be fewer casualties among them. Well, what can a first-level player do anyway? He came up with it cleverly. The guy didn't even understand the meaning at first. Shin Sang-hyun greeted everyone and announced that from that day on he would officially become a player, giving his name. Everyone around him immediately stared at him in surprise, not hiding the frank curiosity in their eyes. The captain watched him with a slight smile, assessing the new participant and his behavior. The guy noticed that everyone was looking at him too obviously, although he didn't expect anything else, but not so openly. Captain Kanate said that the new guy had finally arrived. It was nice to meet him. He thought he would be late. At that moment, the man noticed his weapon, which seemed unusual to him. He asked if it was a longsword, and the guy admitted that it was, and that he learned how to use it from a YouTube video. The man explained that the long sword was one of the most difficult to handle on the battlefield, but at least he could defend himself. He patted the guy on the shoulder and said that he had a hot spirit, and that was always good. A man should be brave. Now they were starting a raid, and the man said that they should have some fun before the battle. As soon as he enters, let him remain in reserve for now, but do not approach the exit. Everyone was wondering how many enemies they would kill today. Some didn't know, but definitely more than him. The captain watched the main character closely at that moment, trying to understand his mood. He could guess what it meant to watch videos on YouTube. The guy looked like a complete fool, knowing nothing about dungeons. It was obvious that he had only recently awakened, but was already behaving like an old man with his last dying wish. According to the raid strategy that the captain had developed, the path under the orcs was the last road for all newcomers. He was sure that this guy would soon realize what an idiot he really was. After just a little while, the captain will be very surprised by this strange newcomer. He even thought that such a thing was simply impossible and wondered who this guy even was. None of them could understand what exactly they had just seen before their eyes. Shin Sang-hyun continued to stand there calmly, as if nothing that was happening bothered him. Orcs are monsters that are most often found in games, novels, and various fantasy films. Since their image is the same everywhere, everyone expected that they would be easy to deal with. There was a common belief among players that orcs were weak and primitive opponents. Of course, compared to monsters like dragons, they were definitely stupid and cruel. Because of this, newcomers, overly confident in themselves, thoughtlessly rushed at them without calculating the consequences. The orcs' stats remained fairly simple, but underestimating them would be a big mistake. It was at that moment that the monster grabbed the guy tightly, causing him to barely stay on his feet. Their average height was about 250 centimeters, and their weight reached 180 kilograms. For this reason, sending a newcomer into battle with the orcs meant dooming him to a quick death. At this point, they were still moving somewhere without slowing down. At some point, the guy told the main character not to treat him specially because he is on his own. He had only recently awakened but was already considered a player, although in reality he was a complete idiot. Shin Sang-hyun replied with a slight smile on his face that he would try his best as he could. Let him just try honestly, and how it turns out, naturally, only the fight will show. Shin Sang-hyun remained silent in response, looking at him carefully at this very tense moment. He asked if he could fight on the front lines then, and when everyone heard this, they couldn't believe their ears. At that moment, the man looked at him carefully, trying to understand if he had gone crazy. It was at this moment that he noticed a huge orc sneaking up behind the main character. His first fight after returning to the past was surprisingly fun and exciting. At that moment, the man raised his weapon, preparing to defend himself from the monster that had suddenly attacked. He asked if the guy was crazy to use such a slow sword in a fight. Shin Sang-hyun replied that he didn't have to save him, let him focus on the matter and not on his tongue. The man couldn't understand whether he should thank him for saving him, or whether it was just an impulse. At that very moment, he saw someone's sword in front of him, flashing in the air. It turned out to be the captain himself, who saved him at that very moment by striking the orc. He threw the monster away from him with force, leaving it writhing on the sidelines of the fight. He asked with a grin if she had a date with a guy and told her to stop messing around. All the fighters immediately began to loudly admire their captain, noting his strength and courage. At that moment, the monster again furiously rushed at the captain, not allowing him to catch his breath. The man chuckled and said that for him it was a mere trifle, not worth any attention. It was at that moment that he thrust his sword straight into the monster's heart, piercing it right through. All the players immediately began to whisper that he was doing a great job because he had struck the monster in the heart. Just at that moment, the monster suddenly broke into a vile, wild grin. The next moment, the monster began to furiously attack the captain, not giving him time to come to his senses. It was at this moment that the captain barely managed to dodge the sudden attack of the enraged monster. Shin Sang-hyun calmly and silently watched this entire fierce battle without interfering. Yoon Dakin, despite his high level, at only level 50, could not deal serious damage to the monster. The man hissed angrily, calling the creature a dirty bastard and promising that it would get what it deserved. At that moment, the captain struck again, attacking the orc from an unexpected direction. Everyone in the fight saw that he seemed to have killed him completely, finishing off the monster with his own hands. The captain asked with a broad smile if everyone was alive, and added that it was a small thing. Everyone unanimously confirmed that they were okay, thanking the captain for his help. It was at this moment that the captain was about to announce the team's departure. But suddenly, strange sounds were heard. These turned out to be new monsters that silently crept up on the squad from the opposite side. The fighters realized that these were armed orcs and hastened to ask the captain what order to give. He ordered a retreat for safety because he barely managed to cope with that one, and these looked much stronger. Shin Sang-hyun suddenly asked if he could try to deal with them on his own. No one could believe he had just said that, and someone even apologized to the captain. The man reminded him that he understood how happy the boy was to wake up, but it was too dangerous for him. However, Shin Sang-hyun did not listen to anyone and immediately rushed into battle, despite all persuasion. He said that the long sword turned out to be quite a good weapon with a very decent cut. No one understood what had just happened when he had cut the monster in two with one movement. Shin Sang-hyun noted with a grin that even at the first level, the cut could have been even cleaner. At this point, the remaining monster watched him carefully, not making any more attacks. All the orcs rushed towards the main character at once, and he declared that his level was low. But despite this, he certainly has enough experience to deal with such creatures. Shin Sang-hyun fearlessly began to fight all the enemies at once, without taking a single step back. Naturally, the enraged monsters attacked him furiously in response, trying to overwhelm him with numbers. Shin Sang-hyun chuckled and asked if they even knew who was standing in front of them. He reminded that he had already killed dozens of people like them, and for him, this was a mere trifle. None of the squad could believe that it was really Shin Sang-hyun, because he destroyed them easily. Shin Sang-hyun told one of the fighters that there was one last enemy left that he would deal with. The last enemy turned out to be a particularly dangerous armed orc with a terrifying axe. The monster immediately rushed to attack the guy, not intending to retreat or be afraid. Shin Sang-hyun suddenly moved from his place, dodged, and immediately rushed towards the monster. It was at that moment that he cut off the orc's head with one movement, leaving the body lifeless. The captain shouted that his skin was too thick and that it usually didn't work that way. Shin Sang-hyun realized that a normal attack would hardly bring the desired result this time. But at the same moment, he ordered others not to interfere and to leave everything to him alone. He began to concentrate his mana and activated the first-level Demon Strike skill at full swing. At that moment, the orc suddenly froze right in front of Shin Sang-hyun, losing the initiative. The protagonist ordered him to stand still and not try to twitch or attack anymore. It was then that the monster became enraged, but it was too late to change anything. The next moment, Shin Sang-hyun took his head off without giving him a chance to strike back. None of the squad could comprehend what they had just witnessed with their own eyes in the dungeon. No one understood how this was possible. After all, Shin Sang-hyun had only awakened 3 days ago, and the interference skill he used was too precise. These weren't even ordinary ultra-short interferences, since their response delay was 1.5 seconds. Isn't he a bit too handy with a longsword? Maybe I should ask what video he was watching. The captain was incredibly surprised that Shin Sang-hyun had dealt with the armed orc so easily. But it's only been a few days since he woke up, so where did he get such a skill from? At this moment, the protagonist received a notification that he had leveled up and received the title of F rank, Fearless Immature Puppy. However, he didn't care at all about the new level, although the title itself seemed funny. He was also informed that he had unallocated bonus points and was offered to choose characteristics to increase. He remembered realizing too late in his past life that the luck stat affected the frequency of artifacts appearing. At this moment, the captain began to persistently ask the guy if he really was that very Shin Sang-hyun. He wondered if it was really a hindrance, where he got such a skill from and where he got it. Of course, he couldn't say that he lived to be 50 and then came back at 25 with all his experience intact. The captain continued to ask if he had decided to deceive them all with his sudden talent. Let him not avoid the answer, because he simply could not have been so lucky without a good artifact. He might be holding a hidden diamond tier artifact or something even higher. The main character grinned and asked if the captain wanted to check everything out personally and see for himself. The captain decided to agree with this, since checking was the only way to find out everything. He couldn't figure out if it was really a simple sword or if it was all about the guy's own skills. He had been exploring dungeons for 2 years, but even he didn't have that speed and skill level. At that moment, the captain was shouted at, informing him that the middle boss had woken up in the central room. The captain ordered everyone to gather and move straight towards him so as not to miss the moment. Dealing with the minions was easy, especially thanks to Shin Sang-yun, but there was no time to relax. His interference would prove useless, as they would soon have to fight a demonic orc. He almost forgot the main reason why he joined this particular unit after his return. At this point, Shin Sang-hyun turned to the captain, who in turn asked if he was scared. The protagonist asked if he could take the artifact for himself if he killed the boss himself. After all, in this team it is customary to pay everyone according to their personal merits, regardless of rank. The Crimson Stone is an artifact that can only be obtained by killing the demonic orc in the dungeon. Even after defeating 100 of these monsters, the chance of this stone dropping remains negligible. In a past life, their team was unable to defeat the boss, and the artifact went to a completely different group. At this moment, one of the fighters conveyed congratulations to the captain for successfully completing the stage. They asked how he managed to get such an artifact, and laughed that they could sell it for a lot of money. Isn't this the only artifact with a delay in this location? Let it stop screaming. The protagonist became interested in the fact that they were talking about the delay skill because he desperately needed it. Shin Sang-yun continued to stand and patiently wait for the captain to answer his question. He recalled that if his memory serves him correctly, they pay here in proportion to their contribution to the battle. The captain listened to this in silence, without giving any direct answer to the newcomer's statement. If you can get the skill of delay now, it will be very useful, although many will condemn the audacity of a newbie. No one on the team took him seriously, considering him just another self-confident upstart. They began to be indignant. Who did he think he was, since he killed a couple of orcs and demanded the artifact for himself? The captain told them to calm down and allowed Shin Sang-hyun to do as he saw fit, but only on condition that they themselves fail to defeat the boss during this fight. Only in this case can he go inside the room and try to kill the monster himself. The protagonist realized that the situation was more complicated than he expected because it meant a lot. The captain told him to keep himself busy while the soldiers dealt with the boss. He considered this guy an impudent upstart, with one normal skill, but with an inflated ego. He promised to make sure they cleared the dungeon and left the newcomer empty-handed. He decided that on the battlefield the main thing is not luck, but experience and the ability to act in time. At that moment, the captain grabbed the lever and began to open the massive gates to the boss's room. Following this, he was the first to enter the hall, where the middle boss of the dungeon was already waiting for them. The middle boss of this dungeon turned out to be a bloodthirsty orc demon, huge and terrifying in appearance. The captain ordered all the fighters to prepare for battle, as the fight would be truly dangerous. He heard that this boss could be easily defeated if he circled around and attacked correctly. Since he is not a team player, he apologized, but there is no room for I in this team. The captain announced that he would take on the boss and ordered the others to keep their distance. A few moments later, the captain was incredibly surprised by what had happened, because everything had gone completely wrong. He didn't understand at all how such a situation could have developed so quickly and rapidly. In fact, the main character was scared when everyone suddenly started running because no one expected it. When it became clear that everything was going down, the captain was asked what they should do now. They replied that they would not die so easily because surrendering to an orc was for weaklings. They said that this orc, like the last one, was too strong, which is why you can't trust the rumors. The captain said that there was no point in taking risks, so he ordered a retreat and postponed the battle for later. At this moment, Shin Sang-hyun was already standing with a slight smile, carefully watching what was happening. The others couldn't understand what was wrong with him, where this strange self-confidence in his eyes came from. The captain said he didn't care, and they would retreat from the flank due to poor visibility. He asked what to do with this guy who clearly wasn't going to retreat with everyone else. He warned him in advance so that he would not be offended if he died first in this raid. Shin Sang-hyun confidently said that the captain shouldn't worry about him. Everything will be fine. The boy gripped the hilt of his sword tighter and declared that he definitely wasn't going to die today. At that moment, the monster roared and furiously rushed to attack, aiming straight at the guy. Based on bare statistics, he didn't have a single chance of winning the fight. but he had a wealth of experience from his past life that could even out all their differences. The monster glared at him, tensing its muscles and clutching its massive weapon. The boy heard someone shouting about his axe, but it seemed he hadn't managed to knock it out yet. The protagonist said with a grin that perhaps all he could do was dodge. Just at that moment, the very stone he needed clearly gleamed on the monster's chest. The hero immediately realized that this artifact was the reason he came here. It was a special effect that combined his demon strike skill and the desired stun delay. He reasoned that if the effects of the two skills were combined, infinite control could be achieved. If he can get this delay skill, the effect will become more than real and accessible. At that moment, the monster roared again and prepared to deliver a crushing blow forward. A few seconds later, he rushed into the attack, swinging his axe like a giant hammer. The protagonist chuckled and called him an obedient monster who does everything as it should. He said that he would be able to discover all the monster's weak points and use them against it. The hero began to skillfully hold back the monster's attacks, choosing the right moment for a counterattack. He activated the demon strike skill, which was supposed to stun the monster for 2 seconds. The captain noticed the skill trigger and couldn't believe that it actually worked on the boss. The protagonist knew that these monsters were stupid, but the orc demon was a completely different level of threat. At that moment, a bright flash flashed in front of his face, leaving a blinding trace in his eyes. Just then, the monster brought his axe down with all his might, aiming straight at the guy. The main character managed to react and defend himself from this monstrous attack, maintaining his balance. The guy completely forgot about the monster's unique ability to quickly regenerate wounds. This ability removed the stun effect early, which put him in an extremely unpleasant position. Now he has to wait a full 15 seconds before he can stun again. If he can't stun him again, he'll have to fight at full strength without relying on tricks. At first glance, the situation seemed simple, but in reality, everything was much more dangerous and complicated. The guy shouted to the captain that they couldn't retreat. Otherwise, they would all die here one by one. Even if this orc seems impenetrable, the captain must understand that there is always a chance. He reminded them that their skills were now almost useless, and the difference in characteristics was too great. Then why, he asked, was Shin Sang-hyun standing there with a grin, as if the fight was already over? The main character had already gone through such a fight once in a past life. He knew that if the enemy was stronger, there was no point in simply swinging a weapon and trying to cut through him. Instead, it is better to use the enemy's strength against him, turning his onslaught to your advantage. That's how he broke through the monster's defense, delivering a fatal blow. The main character ended the battle with a victory, having finally finished off the middle boss. Everyone congratulated him on this victory, and the system reported an increase in level. He received a new E-rank title, Demon Hunter. Now he already has 2 titles, which perhaps compensates for his non-team character. The protagonist looked at the captain and the rest of the fighters. Of course, everyone was completely speechless from shock. There was only one way to smooth over the awkward situation. The hero chuckled and said that he would have almost died if the captain had not done all the damage. One of the fighters played along and asked the captain when he had managed to do it. The captain didn't understand what was going on at first, but quickly figured out what was going on. He looked at Shin Sang-hyun, taking in the situation. The guy gave him a chance to keep his honor and not make him look like an idiot in front of everyone else. At that moment, the captain looked at the artifact lying in front of them. He admitted his defeat and told everyone to be on guard. The final boss was ahead. The captain knew that even with this success, the boy could not have managed it alone. He mentally envied his stun skill, since it almost never worked on mid-bosses. And now that there were no witnesses, the hero could take the artifact. He opened a gap of unconsciousness to absorb the stone. This time, the neural system gave him a Korean dish, bibim naengmyeon. The hero grinned. He was lucky with the dishes again, better than a swamp centipede. He prepared to absorb Crimson, anticipating a new bonus. In accordance with the absorption coefficient, his strength and health stats increased by +2. And most importantly, he received a special effect called Delay. Now he could add a delay effect to his skills, and he immediately decided to apply it to Demon Strike. The effect was successfully bound. After the first stun, a new blow could guarantee a second. The third application gave a 90% chance to continue. The fourth, 60%. The fifth, 30%. This gave a real opportunity to arrange a 4-second continuous stun. Theoretically, the chance was small, but in practice it was more than possible. At that moment, the captain approached him and offered to talk. Just before the final room, the captain asked him if he wanted to join the team. But unexpectedly, he declared that on the contrary, he did not want to take such a guy under his leadership. Instead, he proposed working as equals, without formal leadership. Shin Sang-hyun shook his hand, smiling as he agreed to these conditions. The guy announced to everyone that they were ready for the final fight. He told everyone to stay alert and not to relax. The main character noticed the captain's strange look in his direction, but did not attach any importance to it. The captain said that after the victory, we would definitely have to celebrate with a glass. The doors to the final room of Dungeon #85 swung open. Inside, the monster was already watching them closely. The final boss turned out to be an orc berserker. Huge, even more dangerous than the previous one. Not all of the team went inside at once. The captain told Shin Sang-hyun that he would go first and take the first onslaught. Shin Sang-hyun took out his weapon and told the others to stay close to him. According to him, this boss has lower resistance to stun than the previous one, so there is a chance. He believed that there should be no problems if you attack wisely and don't get hit. But it was at that moment that the monster suddenly rushed to attack, and Shin Sang-hyun realized that it seemed he had overestimated his confidence. In his youth, he was afraid of everything. With age, he tried to simply survive, but now he has decided to change. In order not to repeat the mistakes of the past, he must become different and build a better future for himself. Shin Sang-hyun decided to prove to everyone here what he was really capable of in this fight. The captain couldn't understand what kind of monster was now on his team. It was scary. Shin Sang-hyun gave the command to attack, confident that he could stun the monster for 4 seconds. The monster felt pain, which surprised everyone, and they congratulated him on defeating the final boss of the dungeon. The guys were surprised that he got through everything so easily, even without using a single potion. He noted that he was not going to lift a finger for them. It was their business. Having received the D-rank title of Unrivaled in Strength, he was surprised by the harvest of titles he had never received before. But even this is not enough, because ahead of us is Gyeonsu, a legend of Korea, who reached level 500 in just 2 years. He used to be his idol, but now Shin Sang-hyun is confident that he can catch up and overtake him. The captain asked what he was doing, to which the hero replied that he was simply warming up before the next battle. For his excellent work, the captain gave him a reward, noting that he had really pulled off the raid single-handedly. Shin Sang-hyun asked if he was being too generous, and the captain admitted with a smile, for the sake of saying goodbye. He realized that he would not see the hero again, because he was now a player of a completely different level. The envious boy noticed that the captain was singling out Shin Sang-hyun too much, which caused irritation and anger. He wished that they both would die together, unable to bear the feeling of injustice and envy towards the newcomer. Back home in Songpa, Shin Sang-hyun was glad that this was why he chose the path of a player and not a porter. He earned twice as much as usual and also received a decent bonus on top for excellent work. In addition to the money, I got a bronze-level berserker ring, which still turned out to be useful in battle. He realized that most people don't have time to use such artifacts. Their mana runs out before they can strike. He himself realized the possibilities of such artifacts only after 50, so now he uses them much more effectively. His experience showed that artifacts with energy consumption do not receive penalties, even if the mana is already depleted. He started synchronizing with the berserker ring, deciding that the more skills, the better for him. In a private club, someone was discussing his 4-second stun, suggesting that it was an artifact effect. Another man asked, was he planning to take revenge, or was he simply envious of his luck in battle? He offered cooperation. Since he was the captain's favorite, it meant he could use this to his advantage. But soon they grabbed him, cut off his ear, and demanded that he explain who he took them for. They decided that he wanted to command and use them as his personal mercenaries, which cannot be allowed. They beat him up, showing that here they don't tolerate those who pretend to be someone important. Sang-hyun's home was in Songfa, Jamsil district, where he felt truly alive again. He smiled again, realizing that he became a player not for the money but for the real power. The work of a porter is a pittance, but the players are paid many times more for their exploits, especially when bonuses are added on top, especially for successfully completing the dungeon and defeating bosses. The Berserker Ring, although bronze, provided some good bonuses, especially if you used it wisely in battle. Artifacts that required energy allowed one to ignore penalties even without mana. He knew that for sure. He discovered this subtlety only after he was 50 years old, but now he used it wisely. Thanks to artifacts with energy consumption, you can maintain active effects even when your mana is completely depleted during combat. He started synchronizing with the ring, fully understanding the benefit of combining multiple skills and artifacts at once. Another club was discussing his stunning again. envying his luck and suggesting the presence of a powerful hidden artifact. Some wanted to be punished, some harbored envy, and others were simply waiting for a convenient opportunity to take revenge. One offered a deal. Since he was the captain's favorite, he could be used for his own purposes. But everything changed when he was captured. His ear was cut off, and he was asked to explain who he thought he was. He realized that you can't pretend to be the boss here if you can't be held accountable for it. They immediately made it clear that no one would become his personal servant, even if he was the captain's player. They taught him a harsh lesson, not wanting to tolerate such an impudent upstart who decided to buy and humiliate everyone. They showed that among players, it is not only the level that is important, but also the respect that must be earned in the business. Meanwhile, the protagonist returned home, rejoicing at his luck and future opportunities, because now everything is just beginning. He understood that for such victories and strength, it was worth fighting again and again, risking his life. He was no longer going to be weak. Now his path was to become the strongest player who was feared. The money needs to be paid immediately, otherwise they can start doing something without guarantees later. He should pay what his ear is worth to figure out where to look for that guy. It was a training ground where fighters often gathered to practice their skills. Shin Sang-hyun sat there sighing heavily, as if he was bearing the weight of unpredictable thoughts. No one could have imagined that the ring would turn into a cold cucumber soup of Oriental cuisine that would kill anyone who ate it, causing pain and discomfort in the stomach. However, you can always find positive sides and hidden advantages in everything. At that moment, Shin Sang-hyun threw up his weapon, deftly spinning it in his hands. After that, he quickly grabbed the sword, not letting it fall to the ground. He noticed that the sword was now much lighter, as if it had lost its unnecessary weight. It was a special effect that was always active without recharging, and he decided to use a two-handed sword for now, so as not to accidentally let it go. Overall, it was pretty good and gave the guy a little satisfaction. He realized that he needed a constellation for himself, since a player can only have one, and he must think carefully about the choice. If he had a choice, he would have chosen the one that best suited his luck and statistics. Now he lacked the necessary characteristics to attract her attention and gain her interest. So for now, all he can do is continue to train hard and improve. Shin Sang-hyun arrived in an unknown place, preparing for new challenges and adventures. The boy thought that his mind was developed enough to understand complex situations. He believed that 3 days of hard training and long trips had paid off, mastering new skills, including a basic level of passive swordsmanship. In front of him was Dungeon 101, a solo mountain, a unique and exclusive testing ground. Plus, he could save himself months of waiting to enter a single-player dungeon and was happy he got to that point. At that moment, Shin Sang-hyun noticed something unusual that caught his attention. He saw another car pull up that hadn't been there before. Shin Sang-hyun couldn't understand who was following him and what their intentions were, because he didn't know their plans. However, whatever it is, they can figure out this dungeon together. It was at this moment that they entered the dungeon, preparing for the trials. These turned out to be the same guys that the guy from the captain's team asked to help with the task. He was surprised because he thought that this dungeon was only for one player. At that moment, they noticed Shin Sang-hyun sitting right in front of them, preparing for the meeting. He said that he couldn't believe the mistake, because this dungeon was his area of responsibility. They began to ask him questions, doubting his sanity and adequacy. Shin Sang-hyun realized that the team was unusual and decided not to report them, simply asking them to leave. They didn't have a healer or a mage, and they didn't give up the important stability, so they formed a squad of traders and an archer. Their team resembled a pack of hyenas that hunt people without mercy or pity. One of them started saying that the guy was too self-confident, and if he died here, he wouldn't have a chance to recover. They were previously destroyed due to the constant control of the Players Association, and have not met with opponents for a long time. In such groups, archers are the most difficult to deal with due to their maneuverability. Shin Sang-hyun noted that this is why he had been expecting them in advance and was prepared for the meeting. When the time comes to dispose of their bodies, this will be the most suitable place for the task. One of the men became enraged and began to insult him, calling him a piece of shit. Another said they were not going to take the easy way out and were ready for a serious fight. The man replied that if this was the easy way, he would rip out the enemy's tongue and feed it to him. Shin Sang-hyun said that he is a good dog and should obey his master to save time, so attack all at once. The man replied that this suited him better and he was ready for the fight. He closed his mouth and immediately began to attack, not giving his opponent a chance to rest. Shin Sang-hyun thought that in the dungeon only the strongest survive, and this expression fits best. The monsters of the dungeon always want to kill him, and if not the monsters, then it is the people who wish him dead. Someone always wants to kill him, and this has become an invariable part of his life. If he turns out to be a weakling, he will die, because in the dungeon there are no rules, either he or his opponent. He had a similar experience in his past life, and even at a younger age this rule worked, so everything that is happening here is just self-defense. Shin Sang-hyun asked why they stopped, since they wanted to attack and not show weakness. Immediately after that, they all started attacking him at the same time, leaving him no chance. The guy ordered them to keep their distance and cover each other while they took up positions. They couldn't understand how Shin Sang-hyun could kill Sango so easily, causing them to have doubts, even if he was an idiot. He had reached level 100 since he had just awakened, just like them. Shin Sang-hyun began to spin his weapon and asked where they were going next, not hiding his interest. One of them declared that he was a fucking monster, causing everyone to feel both horror and respect. Shin Sang-hyun did not respond to this insult, remaining cold and focused. The guy thought what was happening was madness, because he easily broke the enemy's arrow. At that very moment, Shin Sang-hyun also killed the attacker, showing his sudden power. They couldn't understand how he threw his sword accurately, and who he really was. This meant only one thing. They underestimated the enemy and fell into a trap. Shin Sang-hyun took a quick glance at the one-eyed boy, trying to read his intentions. They noticed that he was disarmed. The perfect moment for a powerful attack. He said that now is the time to attack, but they haven't started acting yet. The main character's sword was indeed missing from his hands, which was a surprise. The protagonist ran to his weapon while the enemies did not dare to attack. Shin Sang-hyun jumped, trying to reach his sword as quickly as possible. They all attacked him at once and shouted for him to finally die. At that moment, there was a sudden explosion that stunned everyone present. One of them couldn't understand what exactly happened and where the explosion came from. Shin Sang-hyun said it was very close and could have destroyed them all. They called him a complete psychopath, not believing in his sanity and actions. Shin Sang-hyun began to draw his sword, preparing for the next fight. At that moment, the guy asked Yoontae what he was doing when he grabbed his head. Yoontae started dragging him somewhere without explaining the reasons for his actions. It was then that he covered himself with his comrade when Shin Sang-hyun noticed and appreciated it. The guy didn't care at all that he had wounded or even killed his comrade. Shin Sang-hyun asked, wondering if they were also involved in selling human organs. It doesn't matter how he feels about it, because together with her, they trust each other and want to collect mana through organ transplantation, which, in his opinion, is right. You wouldn't know it by looking at him, but he's seen a lot and it doesn't really matter. If he knows, then now is the time to act and not waste time. Shin Sang-hyun said he just wanted to know, without any hidden meaning or intentions. The boy used a demon strike, demonstrating the power of his skill. He said he was afraid of dying of boredom in this battle, and this made him try harder. He couldn't tell if the enemy was deaf, because it seemed impossible. He found it strange that these were just scratches and couldn't believe that this was a special skill. Shin Sang-hyun said that it was all over and the outcome of the fight was decided. Juntae didn't understand if he would really die that easily, because he had always been the one who kills, not the one who is killed. It's been like this all his life and it will never change. The guy told Junta that he believed in him and supported him in difficult times. After some time, he asked again why this was happening and what to do next. He promised to do anything and asked not to kill him, hoping for mercy. Shin Sang-hyun asked if he had ever been in a similar situation, understanding the guy's feelings. Now Juntae was scared, finding himself cornered with no way to escape. Shin Sang-hyun knew that he shouldn't get used to this situation, because he had recently become younger and seemed to have lost his chance to sign a contract with the star. However, it was self-defense, and in such circumstances everything else did not matter. Then he noticed a bright glow on their weapons, which caught his attention. He received 8 artifacts from this dungeon and began to wonder if this meant that everything now belonged to him. Shin Sang-hyun began to dress, preparing for the next stage of his journey. He would have liked to avoid this situation, but looking at the results, he realized that it was all worth it, and he is glad that he was not harmed by the artifacts. Judging by the statistics, he was about as strong as level 50 players, and his growth was exponential after the rejuvenation. In addition, he had additional benefits that enhanced his abilities. The main character had a recovery ring that helped him recover quickly after battles. The guy who attacked him first unexpectedly had a status anomaly removal artifact, which came as a surprise. This meant that if the blow had only been stunning, he would have been in complete danger and would now be more careful. The process of synchronizing energy with the restoration ring has begun, increasing his chances of success. Dungeon number 100 per day, the inner road where the tests become more difficult and dangerous. At that moment, the orc noticed something important that could change the course of events. Shin Sang-hyun stood right behind them, unnoticed and ready for action. The guy sighed heavily, feeling the growing tension and danger. The requirements for getting the title Lucky Day were unusual. You had to kill 500 enemies with your eyes closed. The monsters looked at him in surprise, not expecting such dexterity and confidence. One of them couldn't understand what was going on in this situation, causing confusion. Shin Sang-hyun knew exactly when they would attack and was prepared for their attacks. At that moment, he realized that this would be easy prey for him, without any particular difficulties. The protagonist felt their presence, like a flow of air and energy vibrations around. He needed to concentrate and listen carefully to all the little things around him. He gathered all his strength to fully concentrate on the upcoming battle. Shin Sang-hyun struggled to gain complete control over himself and the situation. At that moment, he felt a movement that would be the beginning of an attack. The guy was confident in his abilities and knew that he would succeed. At that moment, the monster began to advance on him, opening combat without warning. Shin Sang-hyun immediately began to fight them, demonstrating confidence and skill. After some time, the enemies completely disappeared and he was left alone on the battlefield. The guy said it was a good start, inspiring him to further success. At that moment, someone shot him or used something else, causing him to tense up. Shin Sang-hyun sensed the presence of something nearby that could affect the outcome of the battle. So far, he has handled the situation quite well and has not given up. Of course, it turned out to be some archer whose arrow was accurate and dangerous. The monster looked at this with surprise, not understanding what was happening. Shin Sang-hyun recently found himself in a difficult situation from which he managed to get out. Thanks to this, he was able to remember past lessons, which helped him to more accurately sense the situation and react. One way or another, he was ready to accept any attacks and fight with opponents. The monsters, to his surprise, immediately took him as a threat and began to attack. They all rushed at him at once, trying to overcome him. Shin Sang-hyun continued to fight them, not giving them the slightest chance. A smile appeared on his face that spoke of his confidence and determination. At that moment, he was cutting down everyone who stood in his way, sparing no one. The remaining monsters screamed in despair and fear of imminent death. Shin Sang-hyun, of course, killed him, ending the fight without leaving a trace. After this, the hero's level increased and he felt stronger. He was given the title Lucky Day, even though he didn't think he had done anything special. Slowly but surely, he received all the necessary titles, getting closer to his goal. The monster at that moment looked at the guy with surprise and despair. He saw all his comrades killed and understood his fate. The main character thought, why not use this to earn additional characteristics? Because new enemies are already coming for him. After a while, he simply laughed, realizing the absurdity of the situation. Luck stats increased by 30 thanks to this title, which was better than most platinum players. It could have been worth 500 million or even a billion if you look at the market value. The protagonist received a notification that his surroundings began to blur, and now he will be able to afford to buy a house in this life. Shin Sang-hyun realized that changes were beginning to happen, and it felt more and more intense every day. 3 constellations offered a contract. The cleaner of the fallen world asked if he was interested in the suffering of other people. The pilgrim of the great cosmos showed interest in the guy's mystery and asked for permission to negotiate. The goddess of fortune smiled and extended her hand to him, inviting him to make a pact and support his path. The goddess of fortune slowly approached, radiating confidence and intent to establish contact with the protagonist. The main character felt daring and insecure, as this had never happened in his past life. The goddess of fortune showed obvious interest in him, carefully studying his abilities and character. She was intrigued by the hero's luck, as she had never seen such effects from fellers before. He felt relieved that all 3 constellations wanted to sign a contract with him and develop a relationship. The Fallen Dimensions cleaner blessed him for his hidden cruelty, valuing his combat achievements highly. The pilgrim of the great cosmos doubted the hero's true intentions, but saw in him the potential of a saint. He tried to guess why the hero appeared now. Perhaps due to the influence of the goddess of luck. The goddess of fortune was popular even among other constellations, which increased her authority and influence. At that moment, the goddess of fortune looked closely at the hero, as if assessing his inner strength. She stated that she has no special requirements and allows contact with her regardless of choice. The protagonist remembered the incredible merits of the archer, who was able to hit a target even in empty space. The blessing of peace allowed him not to worry about running out of arrows and gave him confidence in battles. Hashimoto Yuki, a disciple of miracles, received the highest praise among archers for his destructive power. The contract with the goddess of fortune was one of those that made the impossible possible for the protagonist. Three constellations appeared before him, and he began to carefully consider his future choice and destiny. The constellations advised not to be afraid of worries and to make decisions independently, despite possible mistakes. The goddess of fortune was undoubtedly a powerful constellation that influenced the hero's fate as a player. In his past life, after 10 years, only one constellation contacted him and helped him in his development. The late dawn became a ray of salvation for him, giving hope and a bright future. Despite hopes, nothing changed until he was 55 and left without support. He left without realizing how important the constellation was and why he had not used its power earlier. Eventually, he was able to return to the past thanks to the constellation, for which he remained grateful and respectful. This meant that living life for the third time would be more difficult and one had to be especially careful. He thought about the holy powers that could influence the outcome of his fate and his future path. Then he thought about the destruction that could destroy everything he had built in his life and career. He also thought about luck, which could become a decisive factor in his fate and success. The main character realized that he had to make a difficult choice on which the future depended. After much deliberation, he finally accepted the contract, weighing all the benefits and risks. As expected, he signed a contract with the goddess of fortune that is valid for 30 years after his death. A being from another dimension watched the player while 15 friendly constellations congratulated him. 3 hostile constellations promised to stop his progress, which caused anxiety and suspicion. The protagonist resolutely ignored the threats and focused on his goal and development. He wished good luck to his opponents, demonstrating confidence and calm in any situation. The goddess extended her hand to him as a sign of support and consent to conclude an important contract. She praised his wise decision, confirming that the choice was made correctly and at the right time. He decided to find out the effects of the contract and told about his desires, expecting improvements and bonuses. All attack attempts now resulted in a critical hit, and unique artifacts revealed hidden capabilities. Using points when leveling up doubled the stats, and luck increased all bonuses at once. The goddess of fortune asked what he intended to do with the proposals of other constellations and plans. Shin Sang-hyun replied that he was only focused on the goddess of fortune and did not prevent other constellations from leaving. The pilgrim of the great cosmos promised to wait for the next meeting and continue to observe its development. The Fallen Dimensions cleaner warned that he would do everything to remove his head if necessary. The goddess of fortune praised his fortitude and determination, supporting him in difficult circumstances. The protagonist realized that with such effects from the goddess of luck, he could not be afraid of the upcoming trials. The dungeon has been reduced to one room with a final boss ready for the final fight. The main character fought the boss, concentrating on repelling all of his strong and furious attacks. The goddess of fortune watched closely every move and decisive moment of his battle. The protagonist asked himself if he was strong enough to win this final battle. At that moment, the hero was completely focused on the battle, without being distracted by anything extraneous. The final boss was a goblin lord consumed by unbridled greed and rage. He sharply attacked the main character at that very important and critical moment. The monster was overcome with rage and persistently pursued the protagonist without stopping. The goblin lord has struck the hero with a powerful status ailment that causes depression and weakness. The protagonist encountered the suppression effect for the first time, which was less powerful than stunning, but still dangerous. This illness significantly reduced the hero's motivation to continue fighting and resisting the enemy. He immediately decided to use the Ring of Restoration to get rid of depression and fatigue. At that very moment, the monster attacked again, trying to interrupt the hero's healing process. The hero could not understand whether he had already killed the enemy or whether the battle continued for a long time. The skill had its limitations and could not fully restore all of the hero's abilities in battle. Recovery was especially useful before battles with less powerful and weaker monsters. Shin Sang-hyun used the recovery skill, preparing for further battles and trials. Thanks to the restoration, the depression weakened and stopped preventing the hero from fighting effectively. At this point, Shin Sang-hyun mockingly asked if the monster thought this would work against him. The skill Demon Strike was used, strengthening attacks and delivered precisely at this critical moment. The Goblin Lord was stunned for only 2 seconds, which seemed like too little to the hero. The protagonist was surprised that the stunning effect lasted only a couple of seconds and expected more. He realized that he would need a few more extra seconds of time to win. The first delay effect has been activated, extending the stun by exactly 2 seconds. The main character continued to vigorously attack the enemy, not allowing him to come to his senses. The chance of extending the stun reached 90%, which significantly increased the chances of winning. The protagonist was surprised that the effect worked again, prolonging the stun for a second time. After some time, he successfully finished the fight, leaving his opponent no chance. The monster fell defeated and without strength after a furious and prolonged battle. The hero was congratulated for successfully clearing the Dark Goblin Swamp dungeon. His level increased and he also received a new D-rank title, Don't Touch Me. The main character was glad that the long-awaited battle had finally come to an end. After a tense fight with the bandits, he felt like he had gotten the dose of dungeon cleaning he needed. The Goddess of Fortune said that behind such luck there is something more than just a bad streak in life. She claimed that luck was a skill he possessed and could change his position easily. The goddess assumed that all the hero's successes were due to her support and blessing. The protagonist noticed that his luck stats had exceeded 100, causing the effects to be corrected and strengthened. The evasion stat, for example, affects the speed and quality of his evasion from enemy attacks. Luck stats increase the frequency of rare and valuable artifacts dropping in battle. Thanks to the Goddess of Luck, he always received a guaranteed artifact after defeating enemies. Luck directly influenced the frequency of artifact drops, providing an advantage in the game. The process of synchronizing energy with the Kudnis shield began, which turned out to be more useful than the help from the late dawn. Not far from Jamsil, there was a quest zone where the hero had to complete important tasks. One girl resolutely refused to accept the conditions or proposals, expressing her opinion. The guy explained that he understood their position, but he had his own compelling reasons for his choice. He had already seen too many deaths this week, and he didn't want things to go wrong. 2 hours ago, he was driving along the Honam Expressway, lost in thoughts and plans. He was worried about the food, the goblin shield, the classic bowl of kimchi and rice he had recently eaten. At that moment, something strange happened, causing confusion and anxiety in the hero. The main character did not understand the meaning of the incoming signals and tried to interpret them. He suggested that changing the car was not the most important task now. It was more important to get to the destination in time. The lower the hero's level, the higher the likelihood of encountering various crimes and dangers. He doesn't want to live in constant anxiety, so moving to a more secure city would be the best solution. You should also consider artifacts. Consider purchasing and absorbing supported items for strengthening. At that moment, the main character thought about this whole situation and the upcoming tasks. The guy understood perfectly well that he urgently needed money for further goals and development. He knew that there was only one place where he could get a lot of resources thanks to the system and the era of players. This system included special tasks that appeared along with it, requiring effort and ingenuity. The organization that controlled these tasks was the Players Association, and he was confident that he could handle it. Here it is. The Task Zone, where the main character had to prove himself and his abilities. The girl in the present tense strongly recommended visiting dungeons that corresponded to the hero's level. The protagonist swore that he was causing trouble, but he was able to control the situation despite being level 17. The girl said that she had already heard similar excuses but insisted on visiting the appropriate areas. He understood that in the current conditions, it was necessary to act decisively and go ahead without hesitation. At that moment, the girl asked for time off to figure out what was going on and why there was so much noise. It turned out to be Kim Miso from the Eden Guild, a level 100 player with an A+ rank. Famous and strong. Shin Sang-hyun immediately recognized her, the first player with an A+ rank and the title of Rising Star among archers. She was the daughter of Kim Yoon-chul, the chairman of a sacred biotechnology company. She is also known by the pseudonym Shadow Killer, which commands fear and respect. After her, Cho was considered the best swordsman in Korea. Jinho, which emphasized her status and strength. Her family owned the largest share in the guild, making her one of the most influential players. She was called the most criminal player in history, and she immediately asked if they were meeting for the first time. She watched him for a while and wondered why he needed such a high-level task. Others were surprised that she spoke to him and thought he was just a brazen level 17 psycho. The girl claimed that the task was very difficult, and the guy confidently replied that he was ready for the challenge. The protagonist said that the higher the risk, the higher the reward, and he intends to complete the task honestly. In her past life, she refused him a guild, although she herself did not want to take him into the team. It wasn't out of resentment. He knew that solo missions were prohibited by the rules of the Players Association. He had long forgotten that this rule only changes every 4 years, and that breaking it is dangerous. Then he laughed, thinking that maybe he would just see how it went, and decided to move on. At this moment, the girl wanted to offer something, ready to help and discuss the terms of cooperation. She asked if he wanted to go through the mission with her, offering support and teamwork. No one could understand her intentions, but she was clearly jealous and wanted to take part in the test. The protagonist did not understand what she had in mind and cautiously asked about the specific conditions. She replied that it was not just a favor and warned about the risks, because life had taught her not to trust people. It is impressive that there are no conditions. It is more of a promise than a concrete agreement. If his skills prove inferior to those he claims, he will pay the price of failure and defeat. However, if her confidence matches her abilities, she will offer sincere apologies and support. The main character realized that the girl was putting him to the test, testing his determination and skills. Her influence went far beyond that of a simple player. The clothing brand rose to the skies thanks to her. With just one word from her, dozens of articles were published, and the careers of many self-confident players quickly ended. The protagonist asked when they were leaving, knowing that there would be fun and danger ahead. The girl told the driver that she would wait here, but she herself could not return to her duties anytime soon. All the guild members had busy schedules, and he would have to find a partner for the task. Luckily, the girl had a reason to go with Shin Sang-yun despite the difficulties. The minimum requirements for participants in the task were strict, but she managed to find a confident player. Nobody knew what this player was really capable of, which made the situation even more interesting. She asked what specific task he wanted to complete so that they could coordinate plans and strategies. The girl immediately offered her idea and plan for successfully completing this difficult task. They had to destroy all the wolf-like monsters rushing towards the defense tower in order to save the core. If the tower's core is destroyed, the mission will fail, and the reward will be 500 million in-game coins. He wanted to complete the mission alone, without the support of other players, despite the risk. The boy asked the girl if she would be afraid if someone died in battle instead of him. The girl asked again and suddenly fell silent, as if she was overcome with fear or doubt. If she's having a hard time, they can wait for other ranged damage dealers or tanks. Perhaps she had some other reason for caution and uncertainty in this matter. The girl said with a smile that she was not afraid and fully accepted the task without hesitation. At that moment, they began to teleport, preparing for the upcoming battle and trials. The girl thought that nothing bad would happen with Kim Miso around, although everything could change. The rest doubted that a level 17 hero would be able to cope with level 100 monsters. She is the youngest player in the top tier, and her reputation made him doubt his chances. He knew about the new ranking system in the Players Association, where level was not the only indicator of strength. Now 2 characteristics are taken into account: the number of dungeons completed and the player's combat sense. The first is the number of dungeons cleared. The second is a general assessment of the player's combat sense and skills. The girl got an A+ rank thanks to her persistence, and he understood why it wasn't just an A, but higher. It is obvious that there is someone stronger than her who surpasses her in strength and skill. Now it didn't matter, because the main thing was to complete the task together and successfully. He decided to go with the girl, despite all the doubts and fears of those around him. Of course, many envied him for receiving the support of such a strong player. The mission took place at night, a time when wolves became especially active and dangerous. The girl took up a position on the roof of the building to better control the situation and provide cover. Her words had weight. If serious danger arose, she would definitely come to the rescue. Shin Sang-yun looked at him carefully during this tense moment, assessing the situation. But the girl hoped that the task would be easy and would bring him back down to earth. Half an hour before, she had asked him, and he had confirmed that she had heard everything correctly. Help costs 5%. She heard right. 5% of the reward for help was a good offer and a fair deal. She asked if her conditions bothered him, since he couldn't handle 300 monsters alone. Even though she is level 100, a solo playthrough would be an extremely difficult challenge for her. At that moment, she noticed something important, and Shin Sang-yun told her to just watch him closely. Then, for each monster missed, his share of the reward was reduced by 1%, which was a serious risk. If he missed 95 monsters, he would not receive any reward at all. He understood this perfectly well. At that very moment, the first monster appeared on the path, threatening both of them. All the monsters looked straight at the protagonist, preparing to attack him without delay. Shin Sang-hyun agreed to her conditions, confident that they would cope and not allow any gaps. The monster stared at him, trying to assess the enemy's strength and plan of attack. Shin Sang-hyun firmly declared that he would not let anyone go and would defeat all enemies without exception. At this moment, the monsters began to rapidly transform, preparing for a dangerous battle. The girl watched what was happening carefully, assessing the situation and choosing a strategy. Shin Sang-hyun easily dealt with the advancing enemies, striking them with his strength and technique. It all happened in a split second, as if time slowed down in that tense moment. Shin Sang-hyun said that the enemy was not small, but she didn't know that yet. She realized that his confidence was not in vain. The blow was flawless and precise. His stance made perfect use of the advantages of a two-handed sword, attack and defense as one. Moreover, he minimized unnecessary movements, killing several enemies at once with one blow. But even with such confidence, the situation remained tense and dangerous. There were too many monsters, and level 17 would hardly be able to cope with such an onslaught. Shin Sang-hyun wondered if he could defeat all the enemies on his own. Suddenly, something was wrong. He stopped abruptly, trying to understand the reason. Naturally, he used the skill Demon Strike to strengthen his attack. It can't be. It was the silencing effect that suddenly worked. The girl was very surprised to see such an unexpected turn of events. Shin Sang-hyun continued to fight the monsters using all his skills and abilities without stopping. She realized that the situation was dangerous, but did not fall despite the prolonged suppression. The stun lasted for 4 seconds, longer than the famous Jinho, surprising everyone around. This meant that he could calmly inflict status effects and quickly destroy all enemies. The girl could not understand who he was and where he got such incredible abilities. At this moment, Shin Sang-hyun noticed something unusual that caught his attention away from the battle. He looked straight at the wolf, who was quickly approaching, preparing for another attack. Suddenly, a powerful explosion occurred, attracting the attention of everyone present and changing the situation. Shin Sang-hyun said that a worthy opponent had finally appeared. It was a black wolf. The wolf was overcome with rage and directed all his anger at the main character at that moment. They had met before, but this battle was especially intense and important for both of them. The wolf was inflicting a stunning effect, and the boy noticed that they had similar combat skills. The girl, watching, realized that the wolf also had a powerful stun, similar to his. Thanks to her artifact, the stun effect was increased, which played a key role in the battle. She was so engrossed in watching the fight that she forgot about her own safety. She wanted to follow the guy's reaction, but the tension of the situation made her shut up. She admitted that she had the ability to cause stunning, but it was rare to use it so early. The stun effect was deactivated due to Shin Sang-hyun's rapid recovery in battle. The girl couldn't understand how he managed to hold his stance with a two-handed sword for so long without falling. He was skilled at removing negative effects even at level 17, which was an unusual skill. Shin Sang-hyun said that his tactics are an unexpected surprise for any opponent. The wolf expected the victim to remain immobile, but the boy moved freely and attacked. The wolf's fleeting moment of panic was decisive and gave the protagonist a chance to win. At that moment, Shin Sang-hyun thrust his sword into the wolf, which decided the outcome of the entire battle. The wolf fell dead, struck by the protagonist's swift and precise attack. The stunned state without the stun skill was powerless against his strength and will. He hoped to slip past the wolf, but was stopped and defeated. Deciding not to stop, he started a real massacre, enjoying the fight and victory. The girl on the roof watched the fight carefully and could not hide her interest. Smiling, she asked who this guy was with such incredible fighting skills. The mission required protecting the tower from wolf-like monsters. 299 out of 300 were killed. After the battle, the hero's level increased, and he received a new title, Without Fear, for his courage. Shin Sang-hyun looked back to assess the situation and prepare for new challenges. His gaze met the girl's, which attracted her full attention and interest. The doubts disappeared. Now she was completely focused on observing the hero's actions. The audience watched attentively, and the performer could not simply leave the battlefield. Suddenly, a new wolf appeared, ready to challenge the protagonist and change the course of the battle. The protagonist wondered if this new monster was ready for the upcoming fight. This was the final boss, the Lord of the Full Moon Wolves, threatening everyone around with his power. The explosion thundered again, filling the battlefield with tension and anticipation of the final battle. The protagonist noted that the boss's attacks are unpredictable and require special tactics. But after 30 years of studying boss patterns, are they predictable? Shin Sang-hyun stated that he knew all of the Wolf Lord's moves and was prepared to counter them. Due to the boss's resistance, Demon Strike did not work, which came as a surprise to the hero. The girl asked in surprise if it was madness that the boss was resisting being stunned and silenced. The boss waved his huge claws like a piece of paper, demonstrating his strength and agility. The protagonist carefully approached the boss, looking for the moment to strike and win. He began to walk around the monster, trying to find a vulnerable spot for an effective attack. The monster followed him, not allowing him to relax and preparing for a counterattack. The protagonist took a defensive stance, facing the boss's powerful attack at that moment. The monster was very surprised, not expecting such a confident reaction from the main character. Moreover, he predicted the movements of the Lord of the Wolves with astonishing accuracy. The main character stated that he had experienced a lot in his past life and now knows all the enemy's moves. The most ridiculous thing was that the monster's behavior seemed like a show of strength specifically for the girl. It seemed like he was trying to show his power to her, as if testing her. The girl asked curiously who this mysterious man was. The fight between the protagonist and the Lord of the Wolves continued tensely and without respite. The hero admitted that the fight was lasting longer than he had originally expected. He had already demonstrated his abilities in front of the girl, and now he was at risk of losing his mind. The main character did not understand why he still had so much energy and strength left for the fight. At this rate, he could fall before he could bring down the monster. The boy noticed something unusual in the movements of the Wolf Lord. He realized that he was facing a powerful blow with a great vulnerability, but it was a trick. This is a special, deadly move of the Wolf Lord that has claimed many lives of players. He had not yet used this technique in battle, so as not to take unnecessary risks. The main character cut off the wolf's paw in time, interrupting the attack. The wolf was ready for the next attack, not intending to give up. The girl continued to watch the progress of the battle in surprise, not believing her eyes. It was at this moment that the wolf suddenly attacked the main character. The girl fell to the ground in surprise, struck by the force of the attack. It looked stupid and didn't match her status as an experienced player. Even seeing the hero's incredible skills, standing aside felt wrong. She felt very sorry for the main character when a mysterious glow appeared. The girl immediately noticed an unusual phenomenon around him. The shield of goodness was completely consumed, crumbled to dust, and disappeared forever. The special effect of the sacrifice was activated, giving the hero new powers. The ability to restore activation became extremely useful after absorbing the shield. Now he had to choose the body part on which the effect of the sacrifice would be applied. He had to decide where to direct this effect for maximum benefit. The entire system was divided into 16 body parts, which seemed too detailed. The back was generally considered the safest choice, although it too was divided into zones. The hero used the sacrifice effect thoughtfully, which helped to fully restore health. The slightest mistake could lead to instant death, so everything was on the edge. The Demon Strike skill activated, but the hero wasn't sure whether he was lucky or not. His right arm, used as bait, was cut off, but it helped to break through the defense. Now the hero was preparing for the next test of luck and skill. The girl came closer to get a better view of what was happening. The immobilization only worked on the third attempt, causing the hero mixed feelings. The protagonist didn't know whether to be happy about this or to remain wary. He turned around and asked if the red-haired girl was nearby at that moment. Kim Miso looked at him carefully, assessing his actions. She said he could have warned her about his healing skill so as not to scare her. She almost had a heart attack when she saw his abilities and stamina. The girl asked if he was living a second life or had special knowledge. She had seen many swordsmen, but none were so mysterious and enigmatic. The atmosphere around him seemed unusual and mysterious. The protagonist turned around and asked what exactly she meant. He continued to insist, trying to understand her reaction in words. Kim Miso admitted that he looks like a ranked player with a lot of experience. The hero was afraid that she might suspect that he had traveled in time, although he was an ordinary player. Kim Miso asked if he was going to end this fight and finish off the wolf already. The wolf made his last hoarse sounds, realizing that he was losing. The main character said that it would be easier with him because he almost forgot an important moment. The title was only for one-on-one combat and was his first S-rank title. The hero reminded that the girl had already defended herself alone before and had done an excellent job. After these words, she fell silent, thinking about what she had heard. There is nothing to be proud of, because a lot depends on artifacts and not just on skills. The girl thanked the hero for his honest and sincere words. However, her artifacts were worth over 200 million, unlike the mass-produced swords. He wasn't going to check this title right away, trusting the girl's words. The title Death Duel was activated, isolating Kim Miso 5 meters away with no allies. The main character was surprised and said that he couldn't believe what was happening. The girl stepped forward first, reminding them to contact the porters. Rewards included byproducts from monsters, which required the help of porters. She promised to give the hero 5% of the reward for completing the task. Everything was fine, and he asked her not to be too reserved. Now they will meet often, and she considers this her investment in him. He understood that he couldn't relax for a minute with her. Shin Sang-hyun realized that now much of their fate would be decided. He was going to check the long-awaited reward, the Blue Moonstone. The boy was shaking with excitement, saying, "Finally!" The award was platinum grade, rare and highly valuable. The platinum artifacts were worth at least $1 billion, comparable to an apartment in the city center. The goddess of fortune was considered the embodiment of good fortune, and touching her was a true blessing. The owner of the torn lips spoke out against unfair luck and proposed to exclude it from the system. The goddess of fortune suddenly proposed to hold a vote to expel the owner of the torn lips. The votes were 61 out of 100, and the proposal was adopted unanimously. The protagonist was surprised and asked if this was allowed, since the goddess was popular. The platinum rank allowed one to absorb about 40% of the artifact's power. He looked like a monster during a total lunar eclipse. They were in the lobby area where the mission was taking place. The main character came out of the portal and was very surprised by what he saw. There were a lot of people standing there watching him. No one could believe that he cleared a level 100 quest single-handedly. Kim Miso wouldn't lie to him in a situation like this. The girl asked no one to disturb the hero. Who in their right mind would give such a task to a level 17 player when it is clearly for a level 100? She also tried to stop him, doing everything she could. They should remember his face, because he will be appearing here often from now on. The head of the scouts of the Guardian Guild was introduced to the hero. He looked dignified. Kim Miso stood up for him, saying that there was something else that needed to be discussed. The hero asked if this meant an invitation to the guild. He wondered how she saved him and what her plan was. At that moment, they were heading somewhere together. The protagonist received a 500 million reward for quick completion. He had never received money so quickly. He felt like he was in a rich house. The girl contacted an A-rank player and pulled a few strings. The hero thanked her for her care and support. The girl said something to the driver and he immediately understood. The switch to secret mode began, hiding their actions. The protagonist said that such a development of events was expected. Goodness is rarely free and simple. The girl laughed and admitted that she doesn't like to embellish things and always speaks directly and honestly. She invited him to join the Eden Guild. She is sure that he will quickly adapt and grow there. The girl asked the protagonist to join their guild, promising support and favorable conditions. Shin Sang-hyun noted that leaving due to lack of skills is a bad idea. Eden is a serious guild. She was sure that he would not regret his decision and waited impatiently for his answer. He used to be a member of a small guild where he felt comfortable and calm, but everything changed. One incident turned his whole life upside down, and now it is important for him to develop quickly, no matter what. He realized that the guild's infrastructure could become a burden for him and decided to go his own way. The protagonist began to apologize, but the girl immediately asked if he wanted to open his own solo guild. He was very surprised by this question and did not expect that she would be interested. The girl turned out to be the daughter of the chairman of a large corporation, an important and influential person. His abilities made it easy to guess this fact, which she had hidden for a long time. What was important was that she was the only one who now knew about his true nature and capabilities. Despite the hero's plans, she revealed all her cards and showed obvious interest in him. She was skilled at building relationships that could benefit her and influence her future. They discussed renting Building C in the Player City, near Jamsil Station. The deposit was 100 million, and the monthly payment was 5 million, which seemed impressive. She mentioned such huge numbers with a sweet smile, and they didn't seem so scary. He agreed to the deal and promised to contact me if any problems or questions arose. The main thing is to quickly find new housing, perhaps again thanks to the help of the goddess of luck and chance. The hero had very few things with him, and he felt almost empty. He stood by the window and looked out onto the street, trying to comprehend everything that had happened during the day. In such a short period of time, many important and fateful events happened for him. His mysterious return to the past and sudden changes raised a lot of questions and thoughts. Before, he didn't know where to go next, but now his worldview has completely changed. He felt a long-forgotten sense of strength and youth that was reviving inside. Although he did nothing, he clearly felt the blood rushing through his veins and filling his body. It was youth, a time of opportunity, strength, and determination that he had regained. He had all his youth in his hands, and it did not allow him to sit still and do nothing. It made him take action, move forward, and not let fear control him. He was determined to live this life boldly, vowing not to repeat the mistakes of the past. Moreover, the opportunities for growth and development only increased with each passing day. At that moment, reporter Park Youngmin called the girl and asked what brought the hero here. She reported that she was next to him in the mission area and monitored his actions. The girl was surprised how she was noticed among the many players she had recently met. At this moment, they were already driving somewhere together, preparing for new challenges and plans. The main character thanked the girl for her help and support during the journey. She replied that she was not going to explore the unknown gates soon, but was forming a team. The team will include only 4 people with a level no higher than 120, a special mission. He immediately agreed to participate and shouted that he was ready for business and was not afraid. However, he immediately rejected the offer to join the guild, preferring solitude. The girl agreed and was glad that he finally had a chance to leave the gate. In simple terms, a dungeon is a fixed location with a constant entrance and exit. The gates are constantly changing. The entrance, exit, and even the composition of monsters changes in real time. The greater the danger, the better the rewards. An unspoken rule of the gamer world that is not subject to discussion. If the gate is unknown, the first clears guarantee high rewards and rare trophies. Kim Miso has probably received similar rewards before for successfully completing high-level missions. He promised to contact her to discuss the details and establish further cooperation. She gave him a phone and asked him to write down her number so that he could stay in touch at all times. At this moment, the main character noticed the wallpaper on her phone, which seemed strange to him. She apologized and explained that she wanted to change the settings so that he could record her phone number. The girl herself did not understand why she was so nervous and behaved unusually at that moment. The main character also noticed her embarrassment and wondered what was really happening to her. He realized that she looked like a person with a history, but without the heavy baggage on her shoulders and hidden secrets. He himself had his own story, which he told no one and kept deep inside. If someone finds out that he has returned to the past, it could become a serious problem and hindrance. The main character thought about his constellation from his past life and what is happening to him now. He was curious about where it was and what it was doing at the moment. After all, they had spent many years together, and he hoped to at least see some of its manifestations. They were currently in the VIP room of the Eden Guild, where they were discussing important matters and plans. Some man said he thought they could finally have a quiet coffee after waiting so long for messages. The girl replied that she and Shin Sang-hyun were planning to explore the new gates in preparation for the challenges. Wasn't he the one who could remain calm the longest and cold-bloodedly rejected the girl's proposal? The girl said that he should start worrying, hinting at hidden dangers and trials. His swordsmanship was very high, perhaps even superior to hers, and he smiled back at her. He joked that he was being compared to Cho Jinho was too much. He was a rank S player with a level of 700. They were at the Jasmine training fields, Zone 3, 4, where they were honing their skills and strategy. The girl dialed the guy, and he replied that he had received her call. Now was the time to discuss the gate. An unknown gate has appeared 500 meters northwest of Chunui Station on Line 7, and reconnaissance has already been conducted. The protagonist said that he had only 1 second to check this information. At that moment, something caught his attention, and he focused on the new data and events. The main character watched what was happening carefully, trying not to miss even the slightest detail. He learned a new skill and couldn't believe how quickly he was able to master it and use it. Thanking him in advance for the warning, he noticed that someone asked if he was calling someone to see him. The protagonist apologized to the captain, but the man said that he was just joking and understood the situation. He is no longer a captain and asked to be called Hen, demonstrating a friendly closeness. The main character did not consider himself famous and understood that there was still much to be done. He didn't understand what kind of call was waiting for him, but he knew that it was better to see once than to hear 100 times. He was on the front page of players, and if that doesn't make him a celebrity, then who is? The man started laughing and advised to turn off the phone immediately. Otherwise, there would be too many calls. He didn't want to be on the front page without consent, which was important for his reputation. He jokingly asked if his distant relatives had called him yet, and the hero replied that only cousins. Now he has another reason to worry. New things to do and new challenges. The man handed him a package and asked if he had spoken to Leon about this item. The main character remembered and thanked, because people might think that they were giving it to him for free. He wondered why the artifacts were covered with old fingerprints and not replaced with new ones. Perhaps someone wants to support his fighting spirit and determination, or it is just superstition. The main character advised to treat this as a sign. Old artifacts are better absorbed. The girl apologized for being late, explaining that she was unable to find parking at that time. She asked if the assessment would start right away so as not to waste time. The protagonist asked the captain who she was, and he explained that she was an appraiser for the deal. The appraiser came to make sure he didn't undervalue the items due to not knowing each other. At this point, the evaluation procedure began, and everyone was watching the process closely. The artifact evaluation was successfully completed, and everyone was waiting with interest for the results. The girl sighed after finishing, hinting that everything was going well and they could move on. She said the price seemed reasonable and negotiations could continue without further ado. Before the final deal was made, she was asked to look at the hero's sword to confirm the price. The protagonist replied that he was not qualified to make an assessment, but he should not pretend to be modest. He confidently stated that this was no place for pretense and let everyone see his true capabilities. He knew he wasn't stupid enough to let his ego get in the way of learning. The main character couldn't stand such uncomfortable and tense situations around him. The guy suddenly noticed something unexpected and important in his surroundings. At that moment, he looked closely at the captain, trying to understand his intentions. To ignore someone who is genuinely trying to help would be cruel and heartless. Then let him just show what he usually does and not pay too much attention. The protagonist told the girl to stand behind him for safety and support. The captain loudly announced that he was beginning to demonstrate his skills and abilities. At this moment, the captain vigorously swung his sword, showing his fighting skill. He noticed that the captain had grown considerably since their last meeting in the dungeon. But besides this, there was something else that distinguished him now from before. The captain continued to display impressive sword-fighting techniques and maneuvers. Shin Sang-hyun turned to the captain, who replied that he was ready to show even more. The boy asked the captain if his left arm was okay after the injury. Shin Sang-hyun explained that he saw the captain swing his right hand, but his left hand opened first. He clarified that he might be wrong, but he noticed this imbalance in the movements. The captain admitted that the injury to his left side does indeed make it difficult to hide his weakness. Many ranks and dungeon explorations were given to him despite the left side limitation. Shin Sang-hyun assured that this injury can be treated and should not be hidden. It is better to choose a bold fighting style that will allow you to reveal the hidden strength of your shoulder. Changing your grip and movement style will be difficult, but it will improve your technique and efficiency. He suggested holding the sword as if squeezing his finger a little tighter for control and precision. The captain asked him to be careful, and Shin Sang-hyun replied that he would endure it, even though it looked ridiculous. He showed the captain how to bend at the waist to improve balance and maneuverability. The girl watched as Shin Sang-hyun taught the captain, patiently enduring all the exercises. She was confused. She couldn't understand what exactly was happening at that moment. Soon, Shin Sang-hyun went somewhere, continuing his affairs and plans. The deal turned out to be a good one, although the sum of 4 million seemed small compared to the benefits. He thought about how the captain was pleased with the sword lesson and the new knowledge. The girl looked strange and a little tired after finishing the training and discussions. Shin Sang-hyun suggested that perhaps she was just tired and that was affecting her behavior. He needed to hurry, eat the artifacts, and check his progress before the next gate. Suddenly, he noticed something important that appeared right in front of him. 2 guys appeared on the road and unexpectedly blocked his path. Shin Sang-hyun apologized and asked if they were okay and if they had entered his blind spot. The man said that he had been waiting for him for a long time and was ready to talk. He invited the hero to get out of the car and explain his intentions. The guy started swearing and calling people idiots for their reactions and behavior. Shin Sang-hyun didn't understand what exactly was going on and why this situation had arisen. The man asked if he wanted to burn in the car or get out and resolve everything calmly. Shin Sang-hyun recognized these guys as Choi Young-chol and Cho Seon-ho from the Utopia Guild. Choi Young-chol would deliberately pick fights with people weaker than himself in order to dominate. What Sung-ho was his assistant, filming YouTube videos and collecting subscribers. After he crossed the line, he was quickly forgotten and disappeared from the spotlight. According to Sheena, these two were no longer considered human. They were too cruel and inhumane. One was level 100, the other 75, which explained their strength and confidence. Shin Sang-hyun wanted to test the new artifacts on these particular opponents for testing. At this moment, the man noticed that the hero began to move, which caused alarm. Shin Sang-hyun asked what he plans to do next and what his intentions are. The man told him not to rush and to calm down, because he was responsible for the safety of the city. The man called the guy an idiot for the old car he drives around here all the time. They were irritated that they had to constantly deal with this worthless old machine. Finally, the guy realized that this was not an ordinary passerby, but someone special. He threatened, if the car turns into scrap metal, the guy should pack his things and leave. Nobody understood what was happening, but they met the same annoying bastards again. The man told his friend to watch the situation closely and not be distracted by anything. He recognized the guy. It was the same one who carried out the mission with Kim Miso. The man asked how strong the boy was, since there were rumors of his solo exploits. He doubted that a newbie would be able to clear the dungeon alone, despite the rumors. Kim Miso was with him, and he thought that the newcomer didn't deserve all the glory. The man had already come up with a title for the next video about this fight and was impressed. They decided to teach the newcomer a lesson, and even took pity on him a little before the fight. They offered to fight one-on-one to test the true strength of the newcomer. If the newcomer wins, they will stop avoiding him and show respect. Shin Sang-yeon agreed, and the man praised him for his courage and determination. If he adds 500 million and his wrist, then they can come to an agreement. Otherwise, the man said, let him go if he is scared and not ready to fight. The comrades started shouting something loudly, trying to attract attention to what was happening. The man asked why he didn't notice what was happening and was busy with his own thoughts. Live chat is asking for 500 million to bet on the fight to make it spectacular. Shin Sang-yeon asked if he agreed, or if he was already scared and ready to give up now. The man realized that if he agreed, the video would be given an age restriction and his income would decrease. He decided to take the chance to relieve stress and prove his strength in battle anyway. Players City, C Plaza building. Spectators watched the battle with interest. Nobody really understood what was happening and how it would all end this time. The training mode was activated to ensure that the fight was as fair and safe as possible. Players have been given a barrier effect, and there is 500 million at stake. The man warned that there would be no mercy, and the fight would go on until the last blow. The training mode is on, everyone is ready for a serious and intense fight. The man asked the boy if he had heard that the fight had already begun and that no one was joking. At this moment, Yongchol received orders from the leadership to take action immediately. Shin Sang-hyun suddenly appeared in the air and launched a swift attack from above. The guy said that he was not joking and would not ask for mercy under any circumstances. Everything happened live, and hundreds of viewers watched the fights online. Kim Miso turned on the TV and saw a fight taking place on the screen. She was confused and did not understand what exactly was happening at that moment. Despite her confusion, she continued to watch the fight with great attention. She recognized the fighter as Choi and Cholia from the Utopia Guild, a high-ranking player. Her sister asked her why she was so gloomy and thoughtful at that moment. It was Shin Terry, level 700, who immediately recognized the guy and the situation. She asked her sister if it was really worth recruiting this newcomer. The sister replied that she did not understand why the guy was there and what he was doing. She noticed the fighter's sharp and strong movements during the fight. The guy said that Shin Sang-hyun is a dangerous and cruel opponent. At that moment, Shin Sang-hyun attacked the enemy with full determination and fury. He stated that this brat definitely deserved to be defeated and punished. He called his opponent a bandit and a worthless fighter. Shin Sang-hyun gripped his weapon tightly, preparing for a fierce defense. He began to actively defend himself, parrying all blows and counterattacking. His determination greatly surprised and confused his opponent in battle. At this moment, Shin Sang-hyun fully concentrated and prepared for a powerful attack on the enemy. Soon there was an explosion, shocking everyone and causing them to freeze for a moment. The guy didn't understand what was happening to this vile and impudent enemy now. Shin Sang-hyun said with relief that everything was finally going according to his plan. Since he returned to the past, his body no longer fails him, and his strength is restored quickly. The deal went through quickly thanks to her efforts. Great job today, everyone noted. The girl modestly replied that they had worked hard together, but the guy did not immediately understand her words. The captain laughed and suggested celebrating the good deal by inviting everyone to join in the fun. Shin Sang-hyun apologized and said that he would not be able to join the captain's company. The captain got angry and asked Yuli if it was because he had paid him too much. Shin Sang-hyun explained that he already had plans for the evening and apologized for declining. The captain told the girl that it looked like they would be left alone, but he remembered her important meeting today. Shin Sang-hyun apologized, but said that the artifacts were now tastier than any strong drink. The girl suddenly ran away, and the captain immediately ran after her. Shin Sang-hyun sat down on the bench, feeling tired and tense inside. He sighed heavily, thinking over the events that had happened and his future plans. Measurements showed that the basic absorption rate of bronze was 10%, and the final rate reached 90%. Shin Sang-hyun was surprised that the absorption rate of the artifacts was as much as 90%. The goddess of fortune believes that all such joys come from her, but he usually receives only 10%. He certainly had something to ask her. She is known as a social constellation with powerful influence. Perhaps she had heard of the constellation of the late dawn of the model student. The goddess of fortune claims that in recent days, all attention has been directed at the player, scolding him for another interest. Shin Sang-hyun simply said that this constellation actually means a lot to him. This constellation really meant a lot to him and was very important. Well, if you think about it, the goddess of luck has every right to be a little offended. The goddess of fortune turned to him again, showing nobility and understanding. Being very noble, she decided to help and look for this constellation for the player. Well, in that case, he can finally get down to this important business. The process of synchronizing energy with 5 artifacts has begun. The real power of men. The process of synchronizing energy with 5 artifacts has been launched. The top best of the best. Shin Sang-hyun was very surprised by everything that was happening around him and his progress. He didn't care how battered the artifacts were. He loved his power. Artifacts with a maximum absorption rate of 90%. How strong he will become. The title True Duel was activated, and he said that it was going to be hot. The man looked scared at that very moment, seeing what was happening. Shin Sang-hyun looked at him attentively, not hiding his contempt. He said that this guy is a bastard and does not deserve respect. Kim Miso yelled at the boy to be careful, and her sister told him not to be afraid. She knew he could dodge and survive this fight. Shin Sang-hyun finally asked him if he had forgotten his agreement and promise. He began to slowly approach his opponent, preparing for the final. Shin Sang-hyun said that for 500 million, he would take his hand without regret. At that moment, something unexpected happened and he was trapped. Shin Sang-hyun couldn't understand what exactly was starting to happen around him. The man suddenly began to smile, as if he was preparing an unexpected move. He declared victory and raised his middle finger in disdain. All conditions were met, and the freeze skill was activated instantly. The protagonist watched the unfolding scene with interest, so he realized that he could use more than just fire magic, and it would work. The girl told her sister not to be surprised and to listen carefully to everything that was happening. Sang-hyun is even able to neutralize the effect of statistics, and now she will begin to understand why she is so eager to recruit him. She should carefully observe what is happening, relying solely on her own vision and intuition. However, at that very moment, nothing happened, and Shin Sang-hyun simply froze in place from the cold. She didn't expect such behavior from him at all, which caused her internal surprise. The man couldn't figure out where the guy had disappeared to and what was really going on here. The skill has been activated, and until he turns off the statistic effect, there simply won't be a way out of the situation. Perhaps he is not as much of a newbie as he tried to show with his appearance and behavior. At that moment, the main character rushed at the man, attacking him from above with his whole body. He asked a question, wondering how exactly all this was possible and happening. Perhaps his training regimen is saving him, or some other defense mechanism is at work. At that moment, the comrade began to seriously worry about his condition and future fate. If you think about it right now, many things become much clearer and cause completely different feelings. He really had a different aura about him that no one had noticed before. No one could figure out what technique was used or where it came from. It all felt very much like the sudden awakening of some previously hidden combat skill. Such awakening can be associated with transcendence or psychedelics, and these black pupils confirm psychedelics. As far as she knows, using such skills requires a lot of strength. He is going to win without taking a single hit from Yeon Chul. The girl chuckled and said that he wouldn't succeed because he had never used this technique with her. This skill requires a lot of luck to activate, so maybe there was just no reason to use it back then. The girl clarified that either it was something else, or he had been deliberately hiding it from her all this time. After her words, the sister simply fell silent, not finding the strength to continue the conversation. Or he managed to find a way to master this technique in an extremely short period of time. The appraiser noted that in this situation, everything is extremely unfavorable and alarming. The artifact the main character bought today should have been tested for hidden potential and power in advance. The probability of having a hidden skill was negligible, but if it were to activate, it would change everything. It felt like he had been kissed by the goddess of fortune herself, giving him an incredible chance. The protagonist asked what would happen to his wrist now and whether it was worth taking into account. It might be worth turning off training mode and trying to complete this test again. He didn't underestimate him just because of his appearance. He just didn't expect such power from a stranger. Now he will begin to take him seriously, realizing the real threat he poses. At first, it was necessary to keep a distance, but now there was no point in it. It was different from Jean Seonho's technique. He knew the opponent was strong, but he didn't expect his level to be so far beyond his capabilities. Maybe this bastard was hiding his true strength all this time and pretending to be weaker. Or maybe he was simply delirious, not fully understanding what was happening and his own actions. The main character firmly stated that he would not stop there and would complete what he started. He hit his head on the ground and said it was time to fulfill his promise. Don't be afraid. The training regimen won't let you die, even if the fight takes a tough turn. The man began to beg for her to stop, admitting defeat and begging for mercy. He promised to transfer 500 million, and the main character said that the dispute was over. Everything else was personal. Whatever he was, his actions now showed his true nature, which can no longer be hidden. The main character said that this is exactly why he started all this, without hesitating for a second. 3 days ago, the car dealership fixed it up a bit, but it will still have to be replaced soon. He replied that it was too old a model and there was simply no point in keeping it any longer. It seems like he's still attached to her. But maybe it's time to say goodbye forever. She was with him everywhere, and he believed that even the car was happy to accompany him. At that moment, it seemed to him that she seemed to answer that she was indeed happy to drive him. Let him take care of himself now because everything else depends only on him. Shin Sang-hyun said that this was for his car, which he always loved so much. The man began to apologize, not knowing how to properly express his remorse. Nobody could figure out what the hell was going on right now. At that moment, one could notice something resembling a rainbow, as if it had appeared right in the middle of space. The audience was also confused, not understanding what exactly they had just seen. The man, already crying, continued to apologize to the guy, asking for forgiveness in a trembling voice. He seemed to be genuinely scared to the point that the smell became unbearable, as if he had eaten something terrible. What Seonho realized that this was a complete nightmare, and now it didn't matter about the channel. They had crossed the line. At that moment, someone approached him, whose presence was immediately felt. It was the administrator who said that they had broken the rules and would now bear the consequences. It was Moon Baekhyun. They immediately began apologizing, trying to resolve the situation before it was too late. The administrator noted that the situation was unusual. He had heard about the recent awakening and wanted to know more about it. It was at this moment that he was approached to begin the formal part of the conversation. He said that he came to discuss compensation, elimination of consequences, and asked if he had some time. Shin Sang-hyun asked if he could show his ID first before continuing. This behavior seemed like an extreme display of arrogance, clearly inappropriate in this situation. However, it later became clear that this was not arrogance, but the cold confidence of an experienced fighter. He introduced himself and apologized for the delay, saying that they wanted to recruit this guy. He added that the Utopia Guild will pay all compensation and demonstrate goodwill by imposing a bond. Shin Sang-hyun replied that they could agree on a symbolic sum of 20 billion, although even 5 was not enough. Of course, the sum of 20 billion or even a billion seemed huge, and the man thought. He asked if he could get a discount or just let the guy who had shit himself go. He wondered how they managed to get to this place so quickly. At this time, many people simultaneously began to offer him to join the guild. The boss told them to leave and asked her if he would return to training. He should stop dodging the question and just answer the question directly. He was asked if the rumors about his affair with Kim Miso were true, but Shin Sang-hyun believed that personal things should remain personal. He hasn't gotten his life in order yet, and he doesn't need an affair right now. Okay, in that case, he will decisively move on to the next stage. It's time to get ready in earnest so as not to repeat the same mistakes as before. It's hard to believe that she suggested doing this joint research on that very day. This created complete chaos last week, which was barely contained. But the result was worth it. Who would have thought that the captain's contract would bring a new harp? In addition, the demon strike has been improved. The effect of the title Overwhelming Influence now lasts 2.6 seconds, and with a delay, longer. And they haven't even completed the whole process. There's still a lot to experience. He decided to look at the fruits of all his recent training to assess what he had achieved. With his current training and additional weapons, he was ready for exploration and mobility skills. In his last battles, he made unfortunate mistakes, failing to repeat his past experiences. When he fought the wolf, he had to take risks due to his limited arsenal of moves. In a fight with another guy, he fell into all the traps, lacking mobility. Simply put, every opponent outclassed him, and he almost paid for it with his life. We need to look at things soberly. Otherwise, at this rate, there will only be a repetition of past failures. The second collapse will occur in 2040, and this time it should change the course of the future. He can't lose everything again. Not in this life and not in this time. He needs to become stronger. Otherwise, everything will go according to the old scenario. He must rise up like the person he is trying to get close to. At that moment, he received a call, taking him by surprise with the news. It was reporter Park Youngmin, with whom he had arranged a meeting. He reminded me about today's interview, scheduled in advance, and wanted to clarify whether it would be convenient. He suggested meeting at a restaurant and sent the exact address for convenience. The enemy cleanup is scheduled for 7 in the evening, but the interview will take place at 2. Now the clock showed 13:45, and there was very little time left. Shin Sang-hyun walked out of the apartment, preparing for the day ahead. However, he was not at all friendly. He emanated a clear threat and internal tension. He shouted for everyone to go to the exits immediately, and the psychedelic skill was activated, strengthening the body and accelerating movements. At this time, the reporter sat calmly at the table and patiently waited for the main character to arrive for the meeting. It was at this moment that Shin Sang-hyun entered the room, and those present immediately greeted him with respect. The reporter said that he had ordered coffee in advance and invited them to come in, sit at a table, and start a conversation. He was about to say something, but suddenly fell silent, as if he sensed something strange in the atmosphere around him. He noted that Shin Sang-hyun looked quite tense, as if he had recently found himself in an extremely dangerous situation. The partner asked if he had come out of a dungeon, but he replied that it was even worse. Shin Sang-hyun apologized for being late, and his interlocutor assured him that nothing terrible had happened. He originally requested an interview because of the incident in the mission area, but another important incident occurred. The more he thought about it, the clearer it became how much of a hot topic this was among players. Although level does not determine skill, with his performance, everyone called him an exceptional and rare rookie. Shin Sang-hyun said there was nothing unusual about this, and that it was not only journalists who were showing interest. He said he had received many offers, possibly hinting at the Eden Guild or some other big ones. The reporter clarified that he was not talking about domestic guilds, but about foreign ones, including those at the international level. He assumed that Shin Sang-hyun hadn't heard about the latest news that had been discussed since early morning. 5 foreign guilds have sent inquiries to the Korean Players Association asking for his details. Foreign guilds even hunt for newcomers. He had never seen such interest in anyone before. There are many eyes watching him now, and his spawn area is a back alley near Chunui Station. He had intended to act alone, but offers from foreign guilds became too tempting. He remembered how he had been treated before and how much it still hurt him. At that moment, Shin Sang-hyun noticed Kim Miso standing nearby in the rain, waiting to meet. She said that they had some free time and there was no need to rush anywhere. Shin Sang-hyun saw another girl, but he couldn't immediately understand who she was and why she was nearby. The 3 of them stood together under the street lamp, illuminated by the soft light of the evening city. Kim Miso said that her sister wanted to meet him and asked him to take her with him. She introduced her sister, Shin Terry, who is also a member of their guild and a good fighter. If he wants to sit down somewhere, there is a suitable cafe with a cozy atmosphere nearby. They greeted each other, shook hands, and formally introduced themselves to each other for the first time. Shin Sang-hyun replied that he was glad to meet her and realized that she had hidden her identity. Her name was known. Shin Terry was an elite player known as the Shadow Assassin, a member of the Eden Guild respected throughout Korea. After returning to the past, he began to encounter great people, and the girl asked for a favor. Shin Sang-hyun replied that if he could help, he would try to fulfill her request without hesitation. She clarified that it was nothing serious and would not take too much time. Her request was one: she wanted to have a short training sparring session with him. Kim Miso was surprised that she had gotten to this point so quickly, considering they had only just met. She explained that her sister always tests first. It was not a spontaneous decision at all. The girl apologized to Shin Sang-hyun, explaining that she just has that kind of personality and likes to tease. Shin Sang-hyun replied that he didn't mind, and he even found it quite interesting. He asked if they wanted to start right now while they had some free time. It's not every day that he gets the chance to fight one of the strongest players in all of Korea. It seems Miso really has a good eye for people. She apologized for her harsh words. She suggested limiting it to just 5 sessions and asked to let him know when he was ready. He has almost no chance of winning, but this is a unique opportunity to test his current level. The girl merely chose a weapon, and her aura suddenly changed, becoming threatening and heavy. This time, there will be no concessions. Everything will be done in all seriousness and with full dedication. The protagonist said that he was completely ready and immediately activated his psychedelic skill. He immediately began to fight at full strength, and the girl could not keep up with the pace of his movements. The girl announced that they would begin with the first technique and assumed the initial fighting stance. At that moment, the space suddenly began to distort, as if under the influence of a strong magical force. The main character was extremely surprised. He did not expect such a level from his opponent in a regular sparring match. He cursed mentally, because at the current level of the body, it was easy to forget how slowly the reaction worked. It was at this moment that the girl suddenly attacked, taking advantage of his momentary loss of concentration. The main character realized that now he needed to anticipate her actions and react in advance to every movement. The girl became noticeably interested in how he would cope with her subsequent techniques in battle. The protagonist continued to defend himself, parrying her blows and trying not to lose momentum in the fight. The girl praised his movements with a slight smile, and he asked if he should hit harder. She replied that there were only 4 moves left and prepared for the next attack. The main character could only watch her lightning-fast movements and look for vulnerabilities in them. Everything happened as expected. She moved at incredible speed and each time only accelerated. At such moments, everything seems unclear. He cannot rely on the usual visual analysis of the battle. Similar to the situation from the past when visual perception proved useless and the feeling of combat was required. He had to catch her movements with his senses, but this time the difficulty increased tenfold. Kim Miso noticed that the protagonist suddenly closed his eyes right in the middle of a tense fight. She couldn't understand why he did it because even for him it looked like sheer madness. It seemed completely reckless and inappropriate considering how serious his opponent was. It was at this moment that he felt it was time to act and not waste a second. At that very moment, he managed to dodge and successfully deflect her swift attack. The girl said that she was amazed by his concentration and did not expect him to reflect even the second attack. Most masters are unable to achieve this kind of focus in combat. It requires tremendous self-control. She realized that it was not a matter of talent at all, but of experience and intuition developed over the years. He moved like a seasoned veteran, with precision and confidence, leaving her no room to move. She noted that there were 3 appointments left, and before continuing, he wanted to ask something. She replied that, of course, he could ask whatever he considered necessary at that moment. Instead of performing the techniques one by one, he suggested that she demonstrate them simultaneously. At first, the girl didn't understand what exactly he meant. It seemed like he was joking. He admitted that it sounded cocky, but he couldn't pass up such a unique opportunity. He asked her to show everything she was capable of, at least once during the entire fight. If she doesn't give it her all, he won't be able to grow further. He won't feel her full potential. Kim Miso tried to stop her sister, but she replied that she didn't mind going along with him. At the same time, she noted that she still wouldn't be able to be 100% serious without activating the mod. The skills are too dangerous to use on humans, so she will demonstrate a simple high-speed strike. She agreed and added that she would hit for real, because the loss would come at that very moment. The girl warned that she was starting the attack, giving him one last chance to prepare. The protagonist realized that he would not have time to sense her location, but he had to be ready. He knew he shouldn't just swing his weapon blindly, relying on luck or chance. Before the opponent reveals himself, he must act first, without wasting a second. He had to move as if he had started the fight, as if the initiative had always been his. The girl was amazed at that moment, her eyes reflecting surprise at his sudden change. The Shadow Mirage skill was activated, filling the space with illusory images and distortions. The main character didn't understand how it happened at all, as if everything worked out on its own. The girl exhaled heavily, and he tried to say something but almost choked. After she struck, she asked him if he was okay and could continue. The protagonist replied that he was fine, and she promised not to use the skill anymore. However, his head ached terribly. The pain was so strong that he could barely stand on his feet. At that moment, he noticed a strange sensation, as if something had changed inside him. She apologized, saying it was all instinctive, and asked again how he was feeling. The girl helped him up, carefully supporting him and not allowing him to fall back. Shin Sang-hyun said he was fine, and added that it was a great honor for him. The girl laughed and said that it was an honor for her too, and promised to meet next time. She expressed hope that they would have another opportunity to talk calmly in a more appropriate setting. Shin Sang-hyun replied that he would be happy to have a normal conversation with her when he had the time. Kim Miso reminded them that the raid was about to begin, and they needed to be fully prepared to go. She added that there is one more important point that should not be forgotten before the task. They definitely needed to make a report to the guild today, since she realized how reckless she had been. Miso wished me luck, asking me to write how everything ends after the raid is completed. Shin Sang-hyun realized that this was his first defeat since returning to the past. At full strength, he wouldn't have been able to withstand even one move. But suddenly, he found himself a goal that he could now pursue with even greater determination. The girl stopped for a moment and turned around, lingering her gaze on the guy with a slight smile. She smiled at him, as if wanting to convey something important and encouraging without words. Shin Sang-hyun understood that her gaze was saying, "Go ahead. Let him try to overtake her someday." The gate of unidentified type number 727 was located near the Chunui station. It all started there. Kim Miso said that they will now introduce new team members for the joint raid. She pointed to two boys who would be participating with them in this study. Shin Sang-hyun introduced himself and said that he was very lucky to be on the team with such cool guys, but the guy replied that they were lucky. The young man called himself Park Tae-sok and explained that he specialized in ignition spells, already being level 120. It reminded Shin Sang-hyun of what Yong-chul had used during their battle a while ago. However, there was something that made Park Tae-sok different from other magicians of his type in this matter. He spent most of his game time developing his fire skills, increasing the power of his spells. Despite this, he was still only at the blue flame stage and understood that he had room to grow. Shin Sang-hyun noted that the guy looks capable, but advised him to focus on one direction until his skills stabilize. One of the reasons for his weakness was that he dabbled in everything, without achieving mastery in anything. Because of this, he became an all-round but weak fighter, not excelling in any particular aspect. Miso then began introducing the next member of the team, drawing everyone's attention to her. Kang Joo-hee had spatial abilities, specializing in spatial communication, and was only at level 10 at the moment. Since the guy had already demonstrated his abilities, she decided to show something in return. At that moment, someone tried to stop her, but it was too late. Everything started to happen. Kim Miso screamed that she didn't ask her to do this. Her warning was ignored. Shin Sang-hyun didn't understand what the gusts of wind had to do with it, since it was about spatial communication. At that moment, he was very surprised to see the city from above, as if from the roof of a skyscraper. The girl replied that this was precisely her way of demonstrating spatial ability. She asked him to take care of her, but Shin Sang-hyun said the opposite. He should be the one saying such words. The girl's wife has formed a very balanced and strategically sound raid team. He was responsible for close combat, Miso for long-range support, Tae-sok provided firepower, and Joo-hee provided tactical movement. Only the lack of a healer made the composition less than ideal. But the most important thing was not this, but something more important for survival. The girl was talking to the guy at that moment, discussing the composition and their capabilities. They have fought together before, and good compatibility and knowledge of partners is better than any strategy. And he himself was once like that. He felt his comrades perfectly, fighting side by side. Shin Sang-hyun felt a little nostalgic as he recalled the past and the old days. The girl asked him if everything was okay and if he felt any discomfort. She asked if he had any injuries from his recent fight with her sister. Shin Sang-hyun said that he was okay. He was just thinking, realizing that it was time to let go of the past. He asked if it was time for them to go inside, since they needed to focus on the present. An unidentified gate called Ice Hell was their next target on this mission. The team was moving through deep snow, and the weather was particularly harsh at this time. Shin Sang-hyun thanked the boy for his help, especially for his support in such difficult conditions. He replied that without his buff, everything would have frozen off because the skill Flame Blessing increases resistance to cold. The girl added that it wasn't so cold last time, and now thanks to Tae-sok, they are still alive. She asked if he had any other weapons and why he hadn't used them yet. The protagonist decided that a more mobile style would be suitable for this fight, since he could always use different weapons. The guy said that he himself was striving for this. He was too lazy to come up with excuses, and the only downside was a return to the past. At this point, Kim Miso called the girl over to begin the next step of the plan. She said they were on Plan C when a monster suddenly appeared in front of them. The girl immediately grasped the essence of the situation and began to act without delay. At that moment, the monster let out a loud cry, attracting the attention of everyone around. He then hit the ground hard, causing a slight vibration under his feet. All team members immediately began to attack the monster together and in a coordinated manner. They said that they were waiting for the protagonist's instructions for further action. He replied that in that case, they should provide covering fire and not retreat. At that moment, the monster raised its head up, carefully observing those around it. Shin Sang-yun looked carefully at the approaching threat, estimating its speed. He was getting closer and closer with every second, not giving me a chance to relax. The girl asked Taesok for help in attacking the monster. Taesok immediately understood her intentions and prepared for battle. At that moment, she fired, and the guy transformed the arrow into ice to strengthen the blow. Shin Sang-hyun, meanwhile, approached the monster even closer, preparing for the decisive blow. It was at this moment that he attacked the monster with an ice arrow aimed at the target. They easily killed the monster in a matter of seconds, acting in a coordinated and efficient manner. Shin Sang-hyun turned to Ju-hee, waiting for her signal that he was ready for the next action. The girl replied that she fully understood the situation and was ready to help in the future. The monster couldn't understand what to do now after such a fast and powerful attack. He began to desperately attack Shin Sang-hyun, trying to turn the tide of the fight. At that moment, a powerful explosion occurred, which excited all participants in the battle. All that was left of the guy was a sword, scattered across the ground after the explosion. At least that's what the monster thought, rejoicing in his victory and confidence in it. Shin Sang-hyun suddenly appeared from behind and asked the monster if he thought he had won. At this point, the monster began to panic, realizing that defeat was near. The guy told the girl to prepare for the next attack so as not to miss the moment. Shin Sang-hyun activated the skill Demon Strike, preparing to deliver the decisive blow. A confident smile appeared on the main character's face because he was sure of victory. Everyone watched his actions, amazed by his skill and strength. The girl and the boy were very surprised by what was happening on the battlefield. Shin Sang-hyun realized that he had to concentrate and exert maximum effort. They asked him what this powerful and sudden reception was. The original plan wasn't to kill the monster with one blow, but that's how it turned out. Shin Sang-hyun changed, but he was told that there was nothing to apologize for, since the girl was also surprised. She had the same reaction the first time she used the skill, which emphasized its power. He hadn't even shown his full potential, and now he felt he had to reveal his full potential. But either way, it was impressive and worthy of respect. They had great chemistry, especially considering it was their first time working together. Of course, this was very promising and promised success in the future. Shin Sang-hyun asked if it was time to start the second round of the fight. After some time, all the monsters were destroyed and the threat was eliminated. Taesok said it was just incredible, and he had never been on a team like this before. Miso added that even if it was a little awkward, the guy should get used to such power. Taesok didn't necessarily use magic, but his skills made him useful and happy. As for the mage, he usually depends on support spells, but not in this case. True, he creates too much pressure on his allies with his abilities. By the way, she was asked what kind of skill it was that impressed everyone so much. She replied that it was a serious and powerful skill, and she would have to get used to its manifestations. At this moment, they fought the monsters, acting as one and supporting each other in battle. Together, they fought against the monsters, working in harmony and using their strengths to the maximum effect. Kim Miso noticed something important that could change the course of the battle and influence the outcome of the fight. She said that there were armed ogre demons ahead that posed a serious threat to the entire team. They need to concentrate all their firepower on these enemies, not giving them the opportunity to take an advantageous position. First, they will ensure a safe distance for themselves to avoid surprise attacks from the demons. Shin Sang-hyun asked the girl if she could open a portal that leads directly to him for quick travel. Miso replied that the portal could not be opened because it was designed for defense, which limited the possibilities. The girl could not understand what exactly the guy was going to do in this difficult situation. However, she understood that in such moments, it was important to trust his decisions and not doubt him. The girl said that Ju-hee fulfilled the guy's request and prepared what was needed for the action. After this, the portal was opened, and Shin Sang-hyun immediately went through it to the battle site. Soon he found himself right in front of the monster, ready for a decisive attack without the slightest hesitation. Shin Sang-hyun easily cut the monster into two pieces, demonstrating his skill and strength in combat. Everyone present was very surprised by his sudden and powerful attack on the enemy. They asked each other if what had just happened was really true and real. This mobility skill was unusually powerful, and he used it aggressively due to his trust in the team. Ju-hee asked everyone to remain silent so that they could focus on the upcoming fight and not get distracted. It seemed they had reached their destination and could now focus on completing the task. Everyone was watching some monster carefully, preparing for the next stage of the battle. It was the mid-boss, the Ice Hell Cerberus, and no one knew if he was sleeping or ready to attack. It is necessary to summarize the action plan because there is not enough information, and it is worth preparing several portals. At this moment, Shin Sang-hyun was smiling like a madman, ready to rush into battle without looking back. So they move on to Plan E, which may help them cope with the upcoming difficulties. Miso noticed that the guy had stood up and asked what he was going to do in the fight now. Shin Sang-hyun continued to smile without answering right away, which caused additional tension among the team. Everyone again noticed his strange expression, which was difficult to understand and predict. She decided to trust him, although she doubted that he had come up with something unexpected and risky again. Shin Sang-hyun didn't give a proper answer and asked everyone to just watch his actions. Although someone wanted an explanation, there was no time left for talking. It was necessary to act quickly. To activate the special effect, Time of Dog and Wolf, the moon must be clearly visible even through the clouds. He apologized to the team, saying he didn't have time to explain everything in detail at that moment. Shin Sang-hyun began to slowly descend towards the monster, preparing to deliver the finishing blow. It is easier to ask for forgiveness after the fact than to receive permission in advance for such actions in battle. Shin Sang-hyun said that even up close he doesn't seem cute, and this is a warning to everyone. Miso warned that the team should be prepared to cover him from possible counterattacks. Everyone was surprised why Cerberus didn't react at all to the presence of enemies nearby. Cerberus was usually aggressive from the start, but now he was unusually cautious. Shin Sang-hyun continued to stand right in front of the monster, not showing the slightest fear. The guy noticed that the monster moved. Perhaps he sensed something and the team needed help. But it was too late to attack. The situation had changed dramatically in Cerberus's favor. Now the monster assumed a completely different pose, which surprised everyone and caused alarm. It was indeed a submissive pose, showing a change in attitude towards the protagonist. Cerberus perceived him as a high-ranking being, worthy of respect and obedience. The monster entered a state of complete submission, which made the team's task much easier. Shin Sang-hyun thought the monster was cute, but he realized that stress would take care of it. He was congratulated on his victory over the mid-boss, noting his skill and luck in the fight. Despite his desire not to kill the subdued monster, he understood that otherwise he could not advance further. He received a C-rank title called Reduction, which confirmed his success and strength. Shin Sang-hyun said that this title will be great for recovery and further development. Miso asked the boy to wait a minute to discuss an important matter before the fight. Shin Sang-hyun turned around and asked what exactly had happened and why he was being detained. At that moment, a strange stone appeared in front of him, which immediately attracted the team's attention. If you think about it, they never discussed loot distribution, and that was a mistake. He didn't intend to take everything for himself, and no one will say that all the loot belongs only to him. He single-handedly defeated the monster, so he rightfully considers this trophy his own. Shin Sang-hyun said, "Thank God," corrected himself and thanked, but was worried about what the others would say. The others, he saw, agreed with this, and so the matter was settled peacefully. Shin Sang-hyun laughed and thanked everyone, deciding to get rid of the habit of arguing about loot first. He said that he would not back down, but rather let him come forward and do what he usually knows how to do. Shin Sang-hyun didn't understand what exactly this meant, especially every time he received an artifact. Doesn't he always do this when he performs his usual ritual? Shin Sang-hyun realized that she really knew his secret and would not protect him. She replied that she had noticed this a long time ago and would not say anything to others. It all started when they just entered that zone and were preparing to leave. She turned around and saw him doing something alone, which made her suspicious. She noticed his secret, and it came as a surprise to her that day. His unique skill is a real lifesaver for players, and it is now open. Sanchen is a player who always performs a certain ritual before a fight or receiving an artifact. There are players like that, and she would have kept it a secret too if she were in his place. Juhi asked if this was true and was told that she was not obliged to protect him. The main thing is to understand that there was a misunderstanding. Better this way than if everything was revealed to the public. If everyone finds out about his skills, he could get into big trouble with other players. In any case, he intends to keep it a secret and not show it to anyone. After some time, Juhi said that he was the last one to come out of the zone. Mosey praised her for her excellent work in keeping her alive. Shin Sang-hyun agreed with her words and thanked her for her support. She asked if he was sure their plan would work, since he had agreed for her sake. Even if they have to sacrifice the bodies of the defeated ogres, the main boss will still eat them. Shin Sang-hyun told her not to doubt. This boss is designed to eat any meat, and that's a fact. He remained silent and did not answer the team's further questions. Shin Sang-hyun told Taesok to quickly use a spell to lure the boss, and the girl realized that she was being ignored. From afar, A huge flame could be seen, indicating the approach of a monster. The team sat in anticipation, preparing for the appearance of a terrible enemy. Teisoku said that 20 minutes had already passed, and Shin Sang-hyun replied that the boss could show up any minute. At that moment, they heard a characteristic roar that scared everyone to the limit. Everyone realized that the boss was already here and approaching their position. Shin Sang-hyun told everyone to be ready and brace themselves for a serious battle. He looked at the team. In front of them stood the final boss, the Ice Grizzly. Miso was in the top position and watched what was happening closely. Thanks to their plan, the fight was not too difficult, and the team dealt with the boss. However, there was one moment that could have changed the course of the battle for the worse. Shin Sang-hyun stood right in front of the monster, completely focused on the battle. Despite the danger of the situation, he was not going to back down and showed confidence. Some thought the situation was too risky, but he ignored it. A few minutes earlier, the team had been discussing the plan of action and possible risks. Miso asked the guy what he meant and received a straight answer. He wanted to be the bait because it was the best way to clear the area quickly and safely. All large monsters become enraged when their health drops and become more dangerous. In this state, the boss becomes physically stronger and shows extreme cruelty in battle. Monsters develop a tendency to devour everything around them, so corpses are used as bait. Then it's worth considering what they can do with this bait to buy time. Kang Joo-hee transported corpses through the portal using juniper wood to anesthetize the monsters. But there's a problem. You need to wear the monster down to the point of devouring it for the plan to work. Create the necessary conditions so that the team can calmly pack up the loot after the battle. There is a role for him in this mission, and this time everyone decided to trust him. Shin Sang-hyun knew he could handle it, even though he was on the verge of death at that moment. He was much more experienced now, which gave him a chance to withstand even the strongest blows. He thought he could handle it, but the situation turned out to be much more difficult than he expected. Why was the monster so strong? Aren't his power points enough for this? If he continued to fight like this, he might die. So he decided to dodge attacks more. At that moment, there was a loud explosion that knocked everyone off their feet. Shin Sang-hyun found himself in midair, trying to understand what was happening around him. The monster looked at him carefully, preparing for the next step. Shin Sang-hyun noticed that his opponent was unusually fast and agile. He didn't understand whether the idea of jumping was right or wrong. At that moment, they started shooting at him with a bow, adding pressure. Shin Sang-hyun jumped to his feet, trying to avoid the blows and continue the fight. He became curious about who exactly was firing at him from afar. Naturally, it was Miso who supported him from a safe distance. The girl said that now he needed to act quickly and decisively. Shin Sang-hyun said her name with a smile, expressing gratitude for her help. He admitted that thanks to her, he was able to survive this dangerous fight. The grizzly looked at the boy with fear, realizing that the situation was changing. Shin Sang-hyun used the full charge of the skill at the decisive moment of the battle. The grizzly bear was frozen for 1 second due to the effect being fully charged. It worked. The ice heart increased the freezing effect when combined with the full charge. He thought it wouldn't work because of the difference in skills, but everything turned out great. Now it was his time to strike the decisive blow and win. The second-level demon skill is activated, giving greater strength and speed. Miso called out to Teisoku, urging him to prepare a powerful attack. Taesok promised to create the biggest explosion to help the team. The girl warned Sanchin that they needed to retreat from the danger zone immediately. Shin Sang-hyun became wary, but obeyed and began to move away. The Blue Fire Flamingo skill was activated, and its power was incredible. His fiery power exceeded all expectations of his team and opponents. At his level, this was considered normal, but it still impressed his allies. The grizzly bear's health indicators reached a critical point, which changed the course of the battle. The energy around the bear began to change, preparing for a new phase of the fight. He himself began to change, becoming even more dangerous and aggressive. Shin Sang-hyun realized that they had worked well together for this stage. The bear entered a state of devouring, becoming much stronger and more ruthless. Miso called Sang-hyun to get ready for the next round of battle. The bear began to devour everything around him, destroying everything in his path. The state of devouring turned out to be much harsher than they had previously expected. Teisoku didn't realize that this state changed the monster so dramatically. Miso asked him how things were with the girl who was preparing the spell. He replied that she was still focused on her business and would be ready soon. The girl was completely focused on preparing the spell at that moment. Suddenly, she opened her eyes, preparing to cast her powerful spell. Miso asked if she would make it in time, but he replied that there was no time to think about that now. The main question was whether Sun Hyun could last long enough in the fight. Shin Sang Hyun didn't understand if the girl was ready, and thought that in that case the raid was doomed. He watched what was happening with fear, realizing that the situation was extremely dangerous for him. The guy had no choice but to simply try to escape from the monster. Sanshin realized that the time had come, and he would not be able to dodge the next attack. Deciding to attack head-on, he activated the psychedelic skill to enhance his powers. At that moment, the girl was just finishing preparing for her action. She announced that she was ready and began to initiate the process of space deformation. At this moment, the monster was as close as possible to the main character. The girl began to create a portal to save them both from danger. At that very moment, the bear suddenly disappeared, leaving everyone in bewilderment. Everyone rushed to the girl, asking if she was okay after such stress. She replied that she was fine, but she had used up a lot of mana, which worried Sun Hyun. The protagonist understood that if he hadn't struck that blow, they would both have been eaten. A large grizzly bear was found to be under the influence of a powerful anesthetic from snowy mountain juniper. Sun Hyun began to laugh out of desperation, realizing that the plan had worked. The success of the plan meant that they were able to avoid certain death in battle.